Chapter 540. After working hard for 4 years, Xiao Chen's cultivation had finally caught up to those peak geniuses who had surpassed him by many years. In the Tianwu continent, from the 4 great empires to the ancient desolate land, then the great Jin nation, then the boundless sea. From today onwards, Xiao Chen's cultivation had finally caught up to those people. Xiao Chen had already opened his sea of consciousness long ago. Now that he was a half-step martial monarch, he no longer had to fear any genius cultivators under martial monarch. However, this is just the beginning. Whoever becomes a martial monarch first will be able to seize the initiative and become the main character of this era. Xiao Chen slowly landed on the ground and quickly calmed down. He muttered to himself, "There are still 9 more months to the 5-nation youth competition. I still have to go to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion and Mo City to settle some things. I might as well take this opportunity to comprehend the 4-season saber technique here. Even if my cultivation is strong, I will need a martial technique that matches it." The spiritual fog covering the island slowly scattered. Xiao Chen was stunned. At some point in time, 10 odd adamantine crocodiles had crawled out of the water on the shore of the desolate island. The adamantine crocodiles were rank 8 spirit beasts. They were 2 meters tall and more than 100 meters long. They had strong limbs and could walk on land for a short period of time. They must have been attracted by the spiritual fog that spread out earlier. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "Good timing. I just advanced to half-step martial monarch. A rank 8 spirit beast is qualified for me to test my saber." Spring Thunder Chop. Xiao Chen circulated his energy for the 4-season saber technique. Soon, pure white snow appeared in the sky, materializing the state of late winter. As spring thunder roared, a boundless power of the world surged out from the saber. Winter passed and spring came. The cycle of the world was unstoppable. The spring wind turned into saber chi and swept across. A gentle sound rang out, and 10 odd adamantine crocodiles were instantly chopped in half. Xiao Chen sheathed the saber in satisfaction. He said softly, "The spring thunder is just a guide. The true killing intent is hidden in the warm spring wind. This move is sufficient to be my trump card. When the spring wind blows, it hides a hidden killing intent. When summer is hot, I will use fire as a guide. When the sun is high in the sky, it will burn everything." Inspiration flashed in Xiao Chen's mind. He immediately thought of the state of summer, the second move of the 4-season saber technique. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was right. So he quickly tested it out. The spring wind dispersed, and the scorching sun hung high above their heads. The pitch-black lunar shadow saber suddenly released a resplendent light. It was like a raging inferno burning continuously. It was as dazzling as a miniature sun. "Burning to desolation." Xiao Chen shouted angrily. The dazzling saber radiance directly chopped down on a small mountain. The raging flames on the saber transformed into a ball of fire. Like a meteor falling to the moon, it crashed down with a loud bang. Bang, bang, bang. When the fireball landed on the mountainside, the mountain peak immediately split open. The raging flames spread out, and the remaining half of the mountainside was like a tree, burning nonstop. Good, good, good. This move will be called burning to desolation. Hee, as expected, inspiration is needed. Once inspiration arrives, this move will succeed in just one try. Xiao Chen said excitedly as he looked at the blazing flames that covered the entire mountain range. "In that case, what should I use for autumn?" Bai Shueha used the wind of autumn. Rustling autumn wind, sweeping away all the fallen leaves. Using the momentum of the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, I will use it to destroy the enemy. However, I already used the wind in spring. I cannot repeat it. What should I use for autumn? Aside from the wind, what else can bring out the feeling of autumn the best? Inspiration was something that was too fleeting. At this moment, Xiao Chen did not have any inspiration. He could only bury his head in thought. The sun rose and set, the clouds gathered and scattered, the tides rose and fell. The days on the desolate island passed one by one. Soon 1 month passed. During these days, Xiao Chen immersed himself in comprehending the 4-season saber technique. After practicing the spring thunder chop and burning to desolation for thousands of times, Xiao Chen was already very familiar with them. With just a thought, he could execute them immediately. However, Xiao Chen's comprehension of the third move, autumn, was still a mess. He had no clue where to start. Bai Xuehe's rustling autumn wind left a deep impression on Xiao Chen. It had already formed an imprint in his mind, making it hard for him to extricate himself. Aside from wind, it was hard for him to think of anything else that could represent autumn. Rustling autumn wind. Rustling autumn wind. But why is the autumn wind rustling? Xiao Chen casually swung his saber and circulated the four-season saber technique. The saber hummed, and an autumn wind blew. Wherever the autumn wind passed, the huge boulders would shatter inch by inch and turn into dust as the wind blew. The boulders would disappear. This won't do. If I do not comprehend it on my own, no matter how strong it is, it will be hard to improve it. Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and frowned heavily as he shook his head. Placing his saber by his side, Xiao Chen lay on the ground and looked at the clouds in the sky. Then he entered deep thought again. Rustling autumn wind. Why does the autumn wind have to be rustling? Rumble. At some point in time, the white clouds in the sky slowly scattered. Churning dark clouds covered the sky, and thunder roared. Dee-da, dee-da. A drop of rain landed on the tip of Xiao Chen's nose. Immediately, a chill seeped into his nose, startling him. Suddenly, Xiao Chen felt excited. Why does the autumn wind have to be rustling? It just varies from person to person. When the trees withered and the autumn wind blew, it swept away all the fallen leaves. It was cold and tyrannical, without a trace of emotion. This was Bai Xuehe's comprehension. However, autumn was also cool and refreshing. The scorching summer was unbearable. When autumn arrived, how could one not be filled with anticipation? How could one feel rustling? Rumble. Rumble. Dark clouds covered the sky, and a drizzle, which had been brewing for a long time, fell from the sky. Soon Xiao Chen's clothes were soaked. However, he did not feel cold at all. He only felt refreshed. Autumn rain, this is my Dao, my saber. Bai Xuehe, you are the esteemed Emperor Wu, the sage of the saber. Since you comprehended the rustling autumn wind and swept away all the fallen leaves. In that case, I, Xiao Chen, will use the autumn rain as a guide to compete with you. Amid the heavy rain, Xiao Chen was completely drenched. However, he had a carefree expression on his face. He laughed loudly because he had finally thought it through. The essence in Xiao Chen's body circulated according to the four-season saber technique circulation method. The saber moved with his heart, slowly dancing in the rain. As the saber moved, the surrounding rain was drawn over, forming a thin curtain of water behind the saber. When Xiao Chen felt the energy of the rain on the saber, he rejoiced. The aura that he had gathered in his body gathered on the saber and burst out. A saber intent shot out from the tip of the saber. Thousands of raindrops filled the sky behind the saber intent. They quickly gathered together. Unexpectedly, all the rain in the sky was drawn over by this saber. Finally, it formed a rippling saber chi with a chilling intent. The saber chi flew quickly, skimming over the surface of the sea. The vast sea immediately split in half, just like that. The saber intent was gentle and tranquil, making one feel very comfortable. It was like seeing a refined fairy. All the heat in one's heart would vanish. However, the might of the saber could even split the seawater. It was no weaker than Bai Xuehe's rustling autumn wind. It's done. This gentle saber move shall be called Fated Person in Autumn Waters then. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and sheathed his saber. The rain, which had already stopped falling, started pouring down again. Time passed by slowly. 1 month passed peacefully once again. Xiao Chen continuously familiarized himself with the 3 moves that he had already comprehended. Spring Thunder Chop, Burning to Desolation, and Fated Person in Autumn Waters. The state of each move was completely different. They were unique. They were all Xiao Chen's own comprehensions and experiences. The four-season saber technique originated from the four-season saber technique, but was stronger than anyone else's. The four-season saber technique still had 2 moves left. They were the winter saber technique and the cycle of 4 seasons. Xiao Chen also needed to comprehend them on his own. If he followed Bai Xuehe's path, Xiao Chen could immediately perfect the four-season saber technique. However, that would be meaningless. He would just be ordinary. Never mind, I'll stop thinking about it for now. It is already not easy for me to comprehend 3 moves. This 4-season saber technique is too much of a test of luck and comprehension. For the past 30 days, Xiaochen had been thinking about the last 2 moves. However, he had not made any progress. He had already wasted 2 months. He did not have much time left. The matters of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion and the Xiao clan in Mo City would take up a lot of time. There was only half a year left until the 5-nation youth competition. He could not keep thinking about it. On this particular day, the sky cleared up and the sun shone down. On the desolate island, Xiaochen practiced the first 3 moves of the 4-season saber technique. Then he sheathed his saber and started his journey. Xiaochen flew quickly through the clouds. The wind whistled past his ears, and his long hair and clothes fluttered continuously. Now that Xiaochen was a half-step martial monarch, he could travel continuously in the air. At 4 times the speed of sound, his speed was incomparably fast. White clouds were constantly left behind by him. 7 days later, the pass to the Tianwu continent, Thunder King Valley, appeared in Xiaochen's vision. Xiaochen stopped and entered deep thought. Originally, Xiaochen had intended to fly over. However, when he saw the inextinguishable immortal will of thunder in the air, he changed his mind. With the help of the Scarlet Throne, Xiaochen had already cultivated the state of massacre to its limits. Now he could no longer improve it by killing people. He needed to comprehend it himself. However, Xiaochen's state of thunder was still at great perfection. It was still far from the limits. The inextinguishable will of thunder in Thunder King Valley might be a fortuitous encounter for him. After making up his mind, Xiaochen descended from the clouds and headed for the 2 sides of Thunder King Valley. There were many people comprehending the state of thunder in Thunder King Valley. Furthermore, they were all half-step martial monarchs. When they saw Xiaochen appear, they all frowned. Every time that inextinguishable immortal will of thunder appeared, it would follow a predetermined path, moving slowly through the air. All the good spots along this route had already been occupied by others. Furthermore, comprehending a state required a quiet environment. Furthermore, the fewer people there were, the more effective it would be. If there were too many people, it would affect one's comprehension. Hence, it was not easy to remain in Thunder King Valley. The people who had already gone up did not welcome newcomers. They could even be described as hateful. Xiaochen stood at the edge of the valley and observed carefully. He discovered the direction in which the immortal will of thunder in the churning dark clouds was moving. Chapter 541. Xiaochen looked at the corresponding spots on the path and discovered that there were no good spots. However, he could make do with it. After thinking for a while, he walked over. Where did this junior come from? Don't you know the rules? Do you think that place is something you can do? A black-clothed old man angrily rebuked. Another old man continued the conversation and said in an indifferent tone, "Just stand there. Only when one of us succeeds in comprehending it can you take over that person's position. This is the rule of the Thunder Emperor Valley." Xiaochen's body trembled slightly. He said indifferently, "Does it mean that no one has comprehended it? Do I have to keep standing there?" The black-clad old man who spoke first closed his eyes and did not look at Xiaochen. He said, "That's right. You just have to wait for a year or so." Wait for a year or so? What kind of joke is this? How could Xiaochen have that much time? Xiaochen continued walking forward without stopping. The black-clad old man suddenly opened his eyes, and a bright light burst out from them. He said in a cold voice, "Take another step and you will never be able to leave." Spring thunder chop. Suddenly, countless snowflakes drifted down and thunder roared. Xiaochen drew his lunar shadow saber at lightning speed. The power of the world spread out from the saber's edge, turning into a spring breeze drifting towards the black-clad old man. "You overestimate yourself." The black-clad old man smiled coldly at first, not caring. However, when the spring breeze arrived, the power of the cycle of seasons arrived, and a huge pressure pressed down. The black-clad old man was horrified to discover that he could not stand up under this soft spring breeze. Bang! When the spring breeze struck the black-clad old man, the power of the world exploded out. The old man vomited a mouthful of blood and got knocked down. When he landed in the valley, he kicked up a few splashes. Xiao. At the peak of the mountain, all the old men who were in deep thought opened their eyes. They looked at the expressionless white-robed bladesman holding the saber in shock. Ignoring the shock in these people's eyes, Xiaochen sheathed his saber and headed for the black-clad old man's position. Young man, don't be too arrogant. Being so ruthless at such a young age. Is this how you treat your seniors? A gray-robed, short-haired old man with wrinkles all over his face said in a deep voice. You have no sense of propriety. We waited for several months, and only sat down when there was an empty seat. Youngsters these days don't follow the rules at all. You can't take this seat. Rules are rules. That's right. If you sit down, does that mean that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can sit down in the future? Where would we put our faces? The 10-odd half-step martial monarch old men in Thunder King Valley started berating him. The old men here were all famous overlords of their own regions, and they were revered wherever they went. They had never seen such a young man who did not put them in his eyes. Naturally, they did not like Xiaochen. Simply put, these old men were taking advantage of their seniority. They believed that a junior like Xiaochen was not qualified to sit with them. Xiaochen looked coldly at this group of old men. He found it funny. Did they really think that Thunder King Valley belonged to them? The moment they opened their mouths, they wanted Xiaochen to wait for a year and a half. Where did their arrogance come from? If a martial monarch expert were here, it would have been fine. However, this was a group of people who could not even break through to half-step martial monarch. What qualifications did they have to say such things to him? There was a principle of first come, first served. However, Xiaochen was not going to take advantage of them and comprehend his own. Secondly, he was not going to snatch their place. Why was there a need to be so forceful? Xiaochen was pressed for time. He could only remain here for half a month at most. There was no need to waste time with these people. When people respect you, I will return it tenfold. However, you are taking advantage of your seniority, twisting words and forcing logic. There is no need for me to give you face. Who cares if you are a senior or an expert? If you are not strong enough, don't brag. When the three old men saw that Xiaochen did not stop and continued walking forward, anger appeared on their faces. They immediately stood up. They locked their auras on Xiaochen, revealing a sharp light in their eyes. The essence in their bodies surged, and their clothes and hair fluttered continuously. You really do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your elders. I will show you how to respect your seniors. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. The three old men leaped up and with a flip of their hands, a sword appeared in each of their hands. A cold light flickered on their weapons and electricity leaped around them. Clearly, they were experts who comprehended the state of thunder. A surging essence spread out from their swords. Wind and thunder roared, and lightning flickered in the sky. When the three old men knew that Xiaochen had defeated the black-clad old man with one saber strike, they did not dare to be careless. They used their full power in this move, wanting to severely injure Xiaochen. Xiaochen drew the pitch-black lunar shadow saber and brought out the great perfection state of thunder. He laughed loudly and said, "If you want to make a move, then make a move. There is no need to find such a dignified reason. I, Xiaochen, will receive it." Boom, boom, boom. As Xiaochen's state of thunder spread out, the immortal will of thunder that had disappeared for a long time in the sky unexpectedly reappeared. Thunder roared continuously. This endless will of thunder seemed to be drawn over by Xiaochen's saber technique. 10,000 horses galloped, the wind and clouds moved. This saber strike roared like thunder. Xiaochen shouted and did not dodge. He used the inextinguishable saber intent to display its sharpness, executing the final move of the rushing thunder saber technique. A huge whirlpool appeared in the churning thunder clouds in the sky. A cultivator riding a golden lightning warhorse and holding a golden lightning spear galloped out of the whirlpool. The warhorse galloped in the air, and thunder roared continuously. The vast state of thunder immediately suppressed the states of the three old men. What's going on? Why is this fellow's state of thunder even stronger than ours? He actually comprehended saber intent. The three old men exclaimed in horror. Bang! Carrying a boundless power of lightning, the lightning knight swept his spear horizontally, shattering the joint attack of the three of them. The sharpness of the lightning knight did not diminish. Instead, it contained a saber intent. The three old men had not even comprehended sword intent. Their state of thunder was not comparable to Xiao Chen's, and their essence was not as vast and pure as Xiao Chen's. The lightning knight gently knocked the three old men into the gorge and into the water. There were merchant ships passing by the gorge all year round. Earlier, when a black-robed old man fell into the water, it did not attract much attention. Now another three old men fell into the gorge. Finally, there was a commotion. The cultivators of the 10-odd merchant ships all gathered on the deck. They looked up, wanting to know what was going on. How bold! Do they really think that we do not exist? Unexpectedly, they still dared to make a move. Xiao Chen attacked mercilessly again, knocking down 3 half-step martial monarchs. This infuriated the crowd, and another 5 old men leaped out. They soared into the air and glared angrily at Xiao Chen. Their auras soared as quickly as they prepared their strongest killing moves. Xiao Chen said calmly, "You are old and disrespectful. You are not strong enough, yet you dare to take advantage of your seniority. All of you get down." Flowing fire of the 7th month, summer in the sky, blazing fire burns to desolation. A fiery light leaped on the pitch-black lunar shadow saber. Suddenly, it released a dazzling light, illuminating the dark clouds that covered Thunder King Valley. That flame was like a miniature sun. Xiao Chen held the lunar shadow saber and charged at the 5 old men without any fear. When he swung his saber, a light burst out, and a boundless flame surged out. The 5 of them were still in the midst of preparing their killing moves, but just as they made their moves, they were completely incinerated by the oncoming flames, and the flames exploded. The huge impact knocked the 5 out of the gorge. The merchant ship below immediately saw 5 human-shaped fireballs fall from the summit. All sorts of miserable cries came from the fireballs, inspiring fear in the hearts of the cultivators on the deck. Another 5 people fell. Among them, there seems to be an elder of the Great Chu Nation's Flowing Fire Manor, and the Great Tang Nation's 100 Flower Manor's Vice Manor Lord. What in the world is happening up there? Who is so powerful, consecutively defeating the famous old men of the various nations? This group of people has occupied Thunder King Valley for a long time. I have never heard of such a thing happening before. The cultivators on the deck were bewildered as they discussed the situation. However, they knew their limits and their own strength. No one dared to fly up to see what was happening. They could only make wild guesses. Attack together. This junior is too arrogant. Let's not talk about justice with him. The remaining 7 people could no longer sit still. Originally, they thought that Xiao Chen was just an ordinary genius cultivator. They had not expected that Xiao Chen, at such a young age, would soon become an unrivaled half-step martial monarch. How laughable. Just a bunch of stubborn old men bullying the juniors, using numbers to fight. How dare they talk about justice? Xiao Chen, who was in the air, laughed coldly. When he saw the 7 people flying over, he brandished the saber in his hand, and a fine drizzle immediately fell. The wind rustled, and the rain fell. A cool breeze blew, and the autumn waters swayed. A beautiful woman smiled faintly. "I will give you a gentle saber strike. Do you dare to receive it?" The rain that filled the sky formed a line. This saber strike was extremely gentle. Before the 7 people flying over could sense the danger, the strong force contained in the saber wind caused them to fly around chaotically. Their clothes tore apart as they did their best to stabilize their bodies, trying to block this saber intent. However, it was to no avail. The saber intent that could even split the sea had already rushed over. How could a group of half-step martial monarchs resist it? The gentle saber intent entered their bodies, and the 7 vomited a mouthful of blood. When the saber intent scattered, not a single piece of clothing remained on them. They fell into the gorge naked, and fell into the water, not daring to float up again. The eyes of the cultivators on the deck widened. It was like they had seen a ghost. Unexpectedly, 7 half-step martial monarchs were in such a sorry state. They could not even keep their clothes. Furthermore, they were all so old. Where were they supposed to hide their faces? Could it be that a martial monarch expert is here? That's impossible. It is impossible for a martial monarch to be in Thunder King Gorge. That will of thunder would not allow a martial monarch to appear. The people below guessed that a martial monarch was here. However, they were immediately refuted. When all the merchant ships left Thunder King Gorge, they discovered that there was only a young figure standing at the summit. This youth wore white robes and had a saber hanging at his waist. His clothes and hair fluttered in the wind as he looked calmly at the thunderclouds above. It's finally quiet. Aside from Xiaochen, there was no one else on the empty summit of Thunder King Gorge. Chapter 542. Thunder King Valley was not private territory. No one had the right to stop others from comprehending it and monopolize it for themselves. In the continent, martial monarchs were the peak combat prowess. No matter where they went, they would be respected by tens of thousands of people. However, there were too few martial monarchs. The Great Qin nation had a population of more than 100 million. Even if all the martial monarchs were added together, there would not be more than 50. Some powers wanted to find guest elders, but could not find martial monarchs. They could only settle for the next best thing, finding half-step martial monarchs. Before the age of geniuses, half-step martial monarchs were the peak combat prowess of a nation when martial monarchs did not appear. Half-step martial monarchs enjoyed an extremely noble and glorious status. They would be treated with respect wherever they went. This was how the old men in Thunder King Valley lived. Hence, when they saw Xiaochen, they immediately put on the airs of a senior and told him to wait for half a year. They did not know that the times had changed. In this age of geniuses, half-step martial monarchs were nothing. The strongest half-step martial monarch, the bloody bladesman Sun Guangquan, could see very clearly. He knew that this was an age of geniuses. Only by continuously strengthening oneself could one not be eliminated by the times. Living in the glory of the past would only make one a stepping stone for geniuses. The boundless will of thunder in the sky had not appeared yet. Xiaochen found a place and sat down cross-legged. Then, he closed his eyes and started comprehending. The lightning-attributed spiritual energy here was very active. Occasionally, one could see electricity leaping about in the air. It was hard to imagine that a bolt of thunder from thousands of years ago could remain here until now, its sharpness not diminishing. The Thunder King was the strongest Emperor Wu of the previous age. As for how strong he was, the current Xiaochen did not dare to guess. The higher one's cultivation realm, the greater the reverence in one's heart. In the past, Xiaochen did not understand. He thought that the Thunder King's strength was at most capable of splitting mountains and overturning rivers and seas. However, now that he could split mountains and overturn rivers and seas, Xiaochen could barely do that. How could the Thunder King be so strong? Only by reaching that realm would one be able to feel the scenery above the peak. In this Thunder King Valley, Xiaochen's martial arts heart had unknowingly become firmer. Up, up, with dreams in his heart, he kept going up. One day, the world would give birth to a Thunder King Valley for him, Xiaochen. His brilliance and his will would be the same as the Thunder King's. Even if 10,000 years passed, it would not be worn down by time, and its sharpness would never be extinguished. For hours later, thunder roared. Xiaochen, who had his eyes closed, opened them and muttered, "It's coming." Amidst the rolling dark clouds in the sky, a golden bolt of lightning was hidden within, floating around continuously. The entire peak was dyed with a solemn atmosphere, causing people to not even dare to breathe loudly. The pressure in their hearts suddenly shook, as if there was a mountain pressing down on their chests. Occasionally, a golden light would pierce through the dark clouds. Suddenly, a malevolent golden bolt of lightning was formed between the heavens and the earth, splitting the void in half. Wang, wang. The lunar shadow saber by Xiaochen's hand trembled continuously, as if it would be drawn at any moment. It was clearly very excited. The vast golden will of thunder in the dark clouds stopped above Xiaochen's head, circling around continuously. When Xiaochen felt the energy in the lightning, he thought to himself, "What a strong will of thunder." There is only a difference of one word between a state and a will, but the aura they bring is completely different. It looks like this will of thunder knows who I am, and is trying to help me. If others wanted to comprehend it, they would only have a chance to do so in the instant the lightning flashed. However, it stopped above my head, allowing me to feel its might at all times. Xiaochen closed his eyes again. This time he did not have any other thoughts. He sank his consciousness into it and slowly unleashed the state of thunder. Time passed slowly. Under the guidance of the will of thunder, Xiaochen's understanding of thunder deepened. At some point in time, Xiaochen's body gave off beams of purple light. These purple lights were all flickering electricity. Xiaochen entered an extremely wondrous state. His entire consciousness seemed to be in a world of lightning. Some strange and wondrous thoughts flowed out like a river. This allowed Xiaochen's understanding of thunder to reach an unprecedented height. The purple lightning drifting around him crackled continuously. 3 days later, Xiaochen opened his eyes again. Electricity flickered in the depths of his eyes, making them look very spirited. When Xiaochen looked up, he saw that the will of thunder in the sky had already hidden away, returning to an unknown place. Xiaochen stood up. With a thought, he casually waved his hand, and a malevolent bolt of lightning flew out from his palm, illuminating the sky with resplendent light. Just as the electric light was about to disappear, Xiaochen waved his right hand, and that bolt of lightning strangely returned to Xiaochen's palm. I can withdraw it as I please. I have already comprehended the state of thunder to its limits. I am just one step shy of becoming the will of thunder. However, that is something for me to consider after I advance to martial monarch. There is no need to think about it for now. Xiaochen sighed softly. In such a short period of time, I have already gained so much. No wonder even a martial sage had designs on this will of thunder. Not to mention how useful it is to me. Just by placing it in the sect, it would be able to create several experts with the state of thunder. Since this matter is over, it is time to return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. With my current strength, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion should not stop me from entering. During the battle at the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Xiaochen had killed the Biyun Peak's Peak Master, Song Quebec. According to the sect rules, no matter the reason, if a disciple killed a peak master, he had to die. The first elder, Jiangqi, spared Xiaochen's life. However, he made Xiaochen swear never to step into the Heavenly Saber Pavilion again. Xiaochen was very grateful to this first elder. Back at the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, if he had not suppressed those noble clan elders, he would have died long ago. Although the first elder chased Xiaochen out of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, in reality, he was still helping Xiaochen. Xiaochen leaped into the air and landed on the Black Dragon River in the middle of the gorge. If he followed the Black Dragon River and leaped over the fork to the ancient desolate land, he would enter the territory of the Great Qin nation. Hey! Just as Xiaochen landed on the river, he heard a soft exclamation. When he turned his head to take a look, his lips could not help but curl up into a smile. Shifeng, wearing black leather armor and a mask that covered half her face, actually appeared in the gorge. Shifeng raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. Brother with a bad sense of direction, are you not afraid of falling to your death after jumping from such a high place? Xiaochen smiled faintly and said, Sorry to disappoint you. Even if I were twice as high, I would not die. Have you not taken off your mask yet? It looks like you did not succeed in your experiential training this time. Shifeng said unhappily, It is none of your business. Xiaochen thought for a while, and took out a wooden box from the universe ring. Then he tossed it to Shifeng and said, Bring this item to your adoptive father. Tell him it is a gift from an old friend. What is this? Xiaochen said calmly, To you and me, it is just a pile of scrap metal. Shifeng caught the wooden shavings in her hand and looked suspiciously at Xiaochen. She said, Why do I have to help you bring it over? Kassier. Right after Shifeng spoke, Xiaochen drew his lunar shadow saber at lightning speed. A sharp saber light flashed. The mask on her face was split in half. With a clang sound, it landed on the surface of the river, revealing a beautiful face. Xiaochen smiled gently and said, There is no need to thank me. Just take it as a thank you gift for helping me deliver this. By the way, you are very beautiful. There is really no need to wear a mask all day. Fighting and killing is a matter for boys. Don't listen to your bastard adoptive father's words about controlling one's expression when fighting. As Shifeng watched Xiaochen leave, she stood on the water in a daze. She did not recover her wits for a long time. The mask that had followed her for more than 10 years was actually taken off by someone just like that. The expression in Shifeng's eyes slowly calmed down from the initial rage. She lowered her head and looked at her face in the water. Then she said softly, "You egomaniac. What do you mean by fighting is a matter for boys in the end? Sooner or later, I will defeat you." In the Shiha province of the Great Qin Nation, at the foot of the Lianyan mountain range, the famous Saber City was bustling with people as usual. The cultivators that passed by either carried large sabers on their backs, or had sabers hanging from their waists. All of them had solemn expressions as they arrived at this holy land for bladesmen. In front of the city gate, a white-clothed youth with a slender saber at his waist stood straight at the foot of the city gate. His handsome and delicate face revealed a somewhat melancholic expression. 2 years, I, Xiaochun, have returned to this place. Originally, it would take 2 months to travel from Thunder King Valley to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. However, with Xiaochun rushing non-stop, he managed to shorten the time by more than half. He arrived in half a month. As he rushed, the closer he got, the more nervous Xiaochun felt. For the past 2 years, he had buried his feelings for his lover in his heart. He did not think about it or ask about it. However, because he was not strong enough, he could not return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. If he kept thinking about it, he would only feel bitterness and nothing else. If he wanted to meet her quickly, he would not think about anything else. He could only bury his feelings in his heart, and not tell anyone. He would taste the bitterness and loneliness. When he reached the peak in the future, he would fulfill his promise. However, now that he was nearing Saber City, the feelings that he suppressed in his heart could not help but leak out. Is she doing well? How is she now? How are her injuries? Will she blame me for not even writing a letter to her? Did she still remember that once upon a time, there was a young and inexperienced youth who shouted those rather funny words from the top of the mountain? Will she still remember the promise that white-robed youth made? Xiaochun smiled in disappointment and frustration. He shook his head slightly and collected his thoughts. After he paid the entrance tax, he slowly walked into the city. The white-robed bladesman's influence is really great. Unexpectedly, there are still people imitating his attire. That's normal. Think about what he did in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He defeated the experts of the Holy Lands alone. Then he defeated the geniuses of the noble clans of the Great Qin Nation. Our Heavenly Saber Pavilion has not had such a genius in the past few thousand years. Unfortunately, that bastard Song Ke is too wicked. He caused our Heavenly Saber Pavilion to lose such a genius for nothing. Yeah, that bastard deserved to be killed. He deserved to be punched in the head. It's not an injustice at all. The cultivators guarding the city whispered behind him. Xiaochun's 6 senses were very sharp. He could hear everything clearly. He could not help but reveal a faint smile. Chapter 543. Xiaochun casually glanced around the city. There were many white-robed cultivators with slender sabers hanging at their waists. Saber City was only the outer sect of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It was very difficult to enter the inner sect. Without a medallion, with Xiaochun's current strength, he would not be able to force his way in. However, Xiaochun had his own methods. He did not go to the inner sect directly. He had come to Saber City for this plan. His plan was simple. He would just steal an inner disciple's token. Even though it was shameful, he could only apologize to the junior brother and junior sister, whose identity was stolen. Xiaochun stayed in the city for half a day and quickly locked onto his target. It was a lone female disciple. He was only in his 20s, and his appearance was delicate and pretty. His hair was tied into a ponytail, and he looked very lively. He held a small saber in his left hand, and a bronze token hung from his waist. After following her to a deserted street, Xiaochun walked up to her and said with a smile, "Hello, junior sister." The ponytailed girl looked at the white-robed, handsome Xiaochun and was slightly stunned. Sensing his unfathomable strength, she quickly bowed and greeted, "Greetings, senior brother." He was secretly shocked. Which peak senior brother was this? He was so strong. He was so young, but he was much stronger than master. The rules of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion were very strict. When junior brothers and junior sisters saw their senior brothers, they had to treat them respectfully. Xiaochun found it funny. It seemed that this little girl really thought of him as her senior brother. Taking advantage of the moment when the other party lowered her head, he moved his hand slightly and hooked the other party's token over. "Senior brother, why are you looking for me?" the ponytail girl asked nervously. Xiaochen put the token into his sleeve and said with a smile, "It's nothing. Senior brother mistook me for someone else. I'll take my leave first." Watching Xiaochen leave, the ponytailed girl was puzzled, not knowing what had happened. Out of habit, he touched his waist and was shocked to find that the token was gone. "Don't leave." The ponytailed girl unsheathed the small saber in her hand at lightning speed. She shouted angrily and swung the saber as if it was her hand. As it spun rapidly, the blade seemed to cut the air in half, bringing with it a whistling sound of air currents. Mysterious wind cut? Xiaochen turned around and smiled. "But you're still lacking. Little junior sister, you have to work harder." Xiaochen stretched out his hand and touched the saber's edge with his fingertip. Surging essence burst forth from his fingertip. Bang! Under Xiaochen's command, the spinning saber turned back at an even faster speed. Before the ponytailed girl could react, the blade was inserted back into the scabbard in her left hand. How could this be? The girl's delicate face was filled with astonishment. One of the 9 secrets of Qingyan, the profound wind chop, was actually broken just like that. After a while, he remembered that he had lost his token. With a sullen face he said, "This senior brother is such a bully. He lost his token and stole mine. What should I do? What should I do?" To be able to recognize the mysterious wind chop at a glance, and break it easily without injuring her. In the girl's opinion, the other party must be one of the genius disciples of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Due to his carelessness, he lost his token and could not enter the mountain. Hence he snatched her token. Xiaochen, who was far away, flipped the token over and took a look. It was as he expected. The words Qingyan were written on the top and Lung Qianqian were written on the front. The words were written in a leisurely manner. "Damn, I have embarrassed myself this time. It really is a junior sister's token. Don't blame your senior brother. Qianqian, right? I will return it to you later." After hanging the token at his waist, Xiaochen arrived at the foot of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Then he followed the crowd and entered. The disciple guarding the entrance only took a quick glance, and did not look closely. There were so many people passing by every day. It was impossible for him to check every single one of them carefully. He could only rely on his experience. When he saw something wrong with their expressions, he would call them down and check them carefully. Xiaochen had been a Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciple for a long time. How could he reveal any flaws? On the familiar road, there were green mountains, pavilions, small paths, and cultivators practicing the saber. There were no major changes to the past. Before Xiaochen entered the city, he was feeling impatient. However, when he stepped onto the land of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he calmed down. Xiaochen took a step into the air and looked at the towering Qingyan Peak in the sky. He took a deep breath and slowly walked over. "Qingyan Peak, I Xiaochen have returned. Elder sister Ryue, Suifeng, Xiaoyang, Xiaomeng, are you all doing well?" The Qingyan Peak disciples passed by Xiaochen one by one. Several of the older generation disciples felt that Xiaochen looked familiar, and stopped to take a closer look. They had some guesses in their hearts. However, in the past 2 years, although Xiaochen's appearance did not change much, his aura had undergone an earth-shattering change. The youthful and immature look on his face was gone. His face now had an air of vicissitudes and maturity. It was very different from before. The most important thing was that in the past, Xiaochen had disguised himself as Yi Chen when he came to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He only revealed himself in the final battle. Although these people had their guesses, they felt that it could not be Xiaochen. Furthermore, that person swore that he would never step into the Heavenly Saber Pavilion again. After taking a few glances, they withdrew their gazes and smiled self-mockingly. "I am too suspicious. There are so many bladesmen wearing white robes. Could they all be Xiaochen? Being careful and hiding would only make others more suspicious." Xiaochen had a calm expression as he confidently walked forward. Xiaochen walked forward calmly. Just as he was about 7 minutes away from Qingyan Peak, a group of people wearing the uniform of Biyun Peak disciples suddenly appeared. Xiao Chen glanced at the appearance of the leader of the group and quickly lowered his head, preparing to keep a low profile. The leader of the group was Song Kei's son Song Qianhe. He was the current peak master of Biyun Peak. At this moment, he was leading the Biyun Peak disciples, chatting and laughing as they prepared to leave the mountain. When Song Kei passed by Xiao Chen, he did not pay much attention to him. However, when his gaze landed on Xiao Chen's face, his expression could not help but change greatly. He had a grudge against Xiao Chen for killing his father. For the past few years, that face would appear in his mind every day and night. Now that he saw Xiao Chen in person, he was shocked. "Stop right there. Which peak's disciple are you from? State your name," Song Qianhe shouted at Xiao Chen in an intense tone. "Was I discovered?" Xiao Chen revealed a bitter smile and turned around helplessly. He was not afraid of this person. However, he had just arrived at Qingyan Peak and did not want to cause any trouble. "Song Qianhe, it's been a long time," Xiao Chen said calmly with an indifferent gaze. "It's really him." Song Qianhe's expression turned sullen. He clenched his teeth and said, "Xiao Chen, you actually dared to appear. Back then, you swore that you would not take half a step into the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Now that you have broken your oath, let's see how you are going to answer to the Elders' Assembly." The 10-odd Biyun Peak disciples behind Song Qianhe looked at Xiao Chen. They were all astonished. "Is this the person in front of us, the white-robed bladesman that caused such a commotion?" Xiao Chen chuckled and said, "Sorry, you saw wrong. I did not break my oath. I did not step into the Heavenly Saber Pavilion." Song Qianhe looked carefully and saw that Xiao Chen's feet were hovering half an inch above the ground. With his long robes covering him, it looked like he was really stepping on the ground. However, in the end, he did not step on the ground. "You." Song Qianhe pointed angrily at Xiao Chen. He was so angry that his face turned red. Song Qianhe drew his weapon with his right hand and said sternly, "I don't care if you broke your oath or not. Since you came to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion today, you can forget about leaving." Xiao Chen's expression sank. He placed his right hand on the saber hilt and emitted a cold killing qi. He said in a frosty voice, "Try taking another step forward." The killing qi seemed solid. It was bone-chilling. Song Qianhe could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. He stopped moving. He could not explain the reason why. The scene of Xiao Chen shattering his father's head with one punch in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion replayed in Song Qianhe's dreams. There was not a moment when he did not want to kill Xiao Chen. For the sake of revenge, Song Qianhe disregarded everything and frantically cultivated for the past 2 years. He became the second cultivator in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to become a martial king before the age of 20, after Lu Riyue. Song Qianhe naturally became the peak master of Biyun Peak, leading the disciples of the peak. He was very spirited. Originally, Song Qianhe thought that after he broke through to peak inferior grade martial king, he would be able to easily defeat Xiao Chen. However, when Song Qianhe saw Xiao Chen again today, he did not expect that one look from Xiao Chen would cause him to freeze in place. Song Qianhe carefully sent out his aura. He was not confident in himself, so he wanted to check out Xiao Chen's cultivation. In the end, when he checked, he discovered that he could not see through Xiao Chen's cultivation. It was unfathomable. He is not a medial grade martial king. He is stronger than a regular superior grade martial king. Could this fellow be a peak superior grade martial king? Song Qianhe was somewhat frightened by his own thoughts. A peak superior grade martial king in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion was comparable to several of the Elders' Assembly's elders. However, a peak superior grade martial king was fine. Song Qianhe could delay him for now. When the elders of Biyun Peak arrived, they could deal with him. Biyun Peak disciples, listen up. This person is a traitor of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Kill him for me. After this matter is over, everyone will be rewarded with 5,000 inferior grade spirit stones. After Song Qianhe made up his mind, he casually sent out a jade green signal. Then he used his status as the peak master to give out orders. Huangdang. Huangdang. Song Qianhe gave out orders. The disciples behind him were all Biyun Peak's people. They were under his command. Furthermore, Xiao Chen had indeed done some rebellious things. Furthermore, there was a large reward of spirit stones. These disciples immediately drew their weapons and pointed them at Xiao Chen. Kill. Song Qianhe shouted, and took the lead to charge. He was not stupid. He did not let hatred get to his head. He knew that he was not strong enough, so he did not try to be brave. He could only use these people to delay Xiao Chen first before looking for an opportunity. After all, it would be very difficult to get rid of a peak superior grade martial king. Unfortunately, there were some things and some people that, no matter how much one calculated, one did not have absolute strength. The so-called wisdom and schemes were just a joke. Song Qianhe was very unfortunate. At this moment, he had encountered this matter, and he had encountered this person. Ignorant. Xiao Chen, who was as straight as a pine tree, snorted coldly. His right hand, which was on the saber hilt, gently moved forward and drew his saber by 1 centimeter. A boundless purple light came from the saber. Contained within the light was Xiao Chen's inextinguishable sharp saber intent. Wang, wang, wang. A sharp saber intent spread out. The weapons in the hands of the many Biyun Peak disciples trembled continuously. Even Song Qianhe was no exception. Chapter 544. The originally ferocious group of people all stopped. They had astonished expressions on their faces, as they desperately held on to the weapons in their hands. Half a move, Xiao Chen only used half a move. This group of Biyun Peak disciples, who were originally very confident and were thinking of a great reward, were forced into a corner. They could only resist the saber intent in a sorry state. Xiao Chen was a bona fide half-step martial monarch, someone close to being unrivaled. Honestly speaking, he was already thinking highly of them by using half a move against this group of people, the strongest of which was an inferior grade martial king. It was only because they were all from the same sect and cultivators who used the saber that Xiao Chen respected them. Otherwise he would not even need to draw his saber. Xiao Chen moved his hand forward again and drew the long, black and sleek lunar shadow saber. It gave off a dazzling purple light, and a boundless saber intent spread out wantonly. So. The entire group of people could no longer hold onto their weapons. Their long sabers soared into the sky and started to spin around nonstop. Saber intent. This is saber intent. The Biyun Peak disciples were all horrified. Their voices trembled as they retreated with all their might. Xiao Chen had a calm expression as he pointed his saber at Song Qianhe, who was trying to flee. An overwhelming killing intent surged out from his eyes, and the air immediately froze. The killing intent chilled Song Qianhe's heart to the bone. Xiao Chen's peak state of massacre locked onto him. He felt like his legs were filled with lead. They weighed 500 kilograms. He found it hard to move. Bang! That killing intent poured into his heart and spread throughout his entire body. Song Qianhe felt an incredible pain in his chest. His legs trembled, and his eyes filled with horror. Song Qianhe could no longer hold on, and knelt on the ground. Song Qianhe did his best to resist the pressure in his mind. He used one hand to support himself, doing his best not to fall to the ground. As he looked at Xiao Chen, his eyes filled with hatred. He clenched his teeth and said, "Xiao Chen, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you are a peak superior grade martial king. After you enter the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you will die for sure." Superior grade martial king? I haven't been one for a long time, Xiao Chen said calmly. A surging crystalline saber chi shot out of his saber. Song Qianhe, who was kneeling on the ground, immediately had a horrifying wound cut open on his chest by the saber chi. The wound was 3 inches deep and blood gushed out like a fountain. His internal organs were clearly visible. Song Qianhe was sent flying. His expression was one of extreme pain. This was one of the main roads of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. If the disciples of the various peaks wanted to leave the mountain, they had to pass through this road. There would be a lot of people passing through it day and night. The fight between Xiao Chen and Song Qianhe had long since attracted the attention of many passing disciples. Several of them were suspicious of Xiao Chen's identity. When they heard Song Qianhe's words, they finally confirmed Xiao Chen's identity. Numerous astonished gazes shot toward Xiao Chen, their hearts trembling. Fuck, it's really him. I haven't seen him for 2 years, and he's several times stronger than before. I suspected it was him long ago. The white-robed bladesman Xiao Chen killed a peak master of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Unexpectedly, he still dares to walk in so casually. He actually comprehended saber intent. In our heavenly saber pavilion, no one has comprehended saber intent in the past 1,000 years. Without saber intent, one is an incomplete bladesman. I wonder if this Song Qianhe is lucky or unlucky. The moment Xiaochen arrived, he ran into him. The surrounding cultivators discussed. The legendary battle between the white-robed bladesman on the heaven-ascending platform 2 years ago was still fresh in their minds. At that time, there might have been people who doubted Xiaochen's strength in the future. However, after seeing Xiaochen's current performance, no one would deny it. That was the beginning of a legend, the epic legend of the white-robed bladesman. Xiaochen sheathed his saber and ignored the severely injured Song Qianhe behind him. He faced the astonished gasps of the crowd calmly, neither arrogant nor impatient. Xiaochen, you killed my father and humiliated me time and time again. Sooner or later, I, Song Qianhe, will make you suffer a fate worse than death. When Song Qianhe, who was on the ground, saw that Xiaochen did not care about him at all, treating him like an ant, he felt humiliated in his heart. Rage. Xiaochen's calm expression sank completely. Who was it that sought trouble with him time and time again, trying to kill him? Who was it that coveted Qingyan Peak's businesses in the heavenly saber pavilion? Who was it that, as a martial king, bullied him, an insignificant martial grandmaster? Who was it that, while he was far away, hired assassins to deal with him? Who was it that, when he was in danger, hit him when he was down? Who was it that, in front of everyone, did not care about propriety and honor, sneak attacking him, nearly causing Ruyue to die? It was Song Ke, Song Qianhe's father. That kind of scum, even if he died 1,000 times, it would not be enough. However, when the words reached Song Qianhe's mouth, they turned into Xiaochen being unreasonable. Xiaochen was bullying him, twisting words and forcing logic, extremely shameless. How could there be such logic in the world? How could he distort the truth and speak nonsense? Bang! Xiaochen's figure flashed and he kicked Song Qianhe's chest, sending him flying into the air. After that he landed heavily on the ground. Don't mention that trashy father of yours in front of me. Don't think that I do not dare to kill you. Back then, I dared to kill your father in front of everyone. Today I dare to kill you as well. Xiaochen stomped on Song Qianhe's body expressionlessly. His voice was bone-chilling. The severely injured Song Qianhe trembled in fear, not daring to say another word. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Just at this moment, 5 Biyun Peak seniors saw Song Qianhe's signal and flew over from afar. Hope immediately lit up in the despairing Song Qianhe's eyes. The people he was waiting for had finally arrived. Oh no, the 5 elders of Biyun Peak are here. These 5 people were superior grade martial kings many years ago. This is bad for Xiaochen. This Song Qianhe father and son are really sinful. They forced away our heavenly saber pavilion's genius. Now they are here to kill him. Indeed, if he can represent the heavenly saber pavilion in the 5-nation youth competition and obtain a good ranking, we will be able to bask in his glory. With Xiaochen's current strength, entering the top 50 will not be a problem. At that time, the heavenly saber pavilion will obtain luck. Our luck will increase as well. Unfortunately, that bastard Song Ke sent our genius to his grave. What a bastard! This father and son are both not good people. The young cultivators present all felt that it was a pity. It had to be known that the heavenly saber pavilion had not produced a genius like Xiaochen for a long time already. Back then, Morongcheng was very powerful. However, his reputation was far from comparable to Xiaochen's. Back then, during the battle at the heaven-ascending platform, Xiaochen had become famous. He had soared to the sky in one go. Even the young disciples of the heavenly saber pavilion had basked in Xiaochen's glory. When they went out for experiential training, people would often ask about it, regardless of whether they were from the same sect as Xiaochen. When they received an affirmative answer, they would receive envious gazes. The heavenly saber pavilion had been weak for many years. It had always been suppressed by the Misty Sword sect and the Night Spirit Palace. As a disciple of the heavenly saber pavilion, they had never received such treatment before. Among the younger generation of disciples, they all worshipped and respected Xiaochen. They did not have any good impressions of the Song Qianhe father and son, who did not dream of being a hero when they were young, who did not want to become a legend, to be respected by thousands. However, reality was too cruel. As they grew older, they would dismiss such dreams with a smile. However, one day, they suddenly discovered such a heroic deed, such a legend, was right beside them. How could their blood not boil? When they saw that Xiao Chen was in trouble, all of them became anxious. In contrast to them, Song Qianhe, who was under Xiao Chen's feet, had an extremely happy smile on his face. His smile was incomparably carefree. It was a smile that was as carefree as it could be. A smile that was as carefree as it could be. This was because Song Qianhe knew that he would soon trample on this white-robed bladesman, who had stepped on his chest. Then, he would be able to take revenge for the humiliation and grudge he suffered in the past. 5 old men wearing Biyun Peak's uniform stood in the air. When they saw Biyun Peak's unique peak master asking for help, they rushed over immediately. Unexpectedly, he was still a step too late. When he saw the situation, he immediately understood what was going on. Uncles, he is Xiao Chen. He is the one who killed my father. He is only a peak superior grade martial king. You have to take revenge for me. Song Qianhe shouted, ignoring the fact that Xiao Chen was stepping on him. The 5 old men were already over 80 years old. They had a lot of life experience. They took a quick glance at Xiao Chen and started cursing in their hearts. Song Qianhe did not know what cultivation realm Xiao Chen was in. However, they knew with one glance. How was this a peak superior grade martial king? He was clearly a half-step martial monarch. Furthermore, his aura was strong and drawn out. He was not a half-step martial monarch that cultivated a trash cultivation technique. Song Qianhe, this little bastard, wanting them to go was simply sending them to their deaths. Although the difference between a peak superior grade martial king and a half-step martial monarch was not as great as between a martial king and a martial monarch, it was still a huge difference. The 5 old men were very old. After living for so long, they were all very astute. They knew that the 5 of them working together would not be able to hold back Xiao Chen. Furthermore, they would offend a genius cultivator with a bright future. They did not say anything. They exchanged glances and flew away, returning to where they came from. Why did the 5 martial kings leave just like that? How strange. Could they have been scared off? The many disciples who were worried for Xiao Chen all felt suspicious. Song Qianhe's mouth was wide open. His mouth was so wide that he could easily fit an egg in it. The carefree smile on his face did not even have time to fade. Why did they leave without saying anything? These uncles are the ones who dote on me the most. How could it be like this? How could it be like this? The difference was too great. Song Qianhe felt dizzy. It was like his brain had short-circuited in that instant. Falling from the peak to the bottom of the valley was not the most miserable feeling. The most miserable feeling was when one fell to the bottom and thought that one had a chance to turn things around. Who knew one would fall back down? At this moment, Song Qianhe finally experienced this feeling. Furthermore, he was severely injured. His final hope was shattered. He could not catch his breath and fainted. Xiao Chen was not surprised at the actions of the 5 Biyun Peak old men. They clearly knew that they could not defeat him. Yet they still insisted on fighting. There would not be such stupid people in this world. If the 5 old men were half-step martial monarchs, with the resources of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion and their experience, they might have a 50% chance of defeating him. Unfortunately, they were not. They were only superior grade martial kings. In that case, they would not stand a chance at all. Chapter 545. Casually kicking Song Qianhe aside, Xiao Chen raised his head and looked at the clouds above. There were a few strong gazes staring at him from within the clouds. However, they did not have any malicious intent. They also did not intend to stop Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen felt excited. He knew who was in the clouds. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion was not a place where a half-step martial monarch like him could do as he pleased. Not to mention the few core elders of the Elders Institute. They were all half-step martial monarchs. Any one of those supreme elders with startling cultivations could easily kill him. The fact that those strong existences did not make a move against him was a clear indication of their attitude. This attitude made Xiaochen feel more at ease. Xiaochen hovered about 1 centimeter off the ground and continued walking towards Qingyan Peak. The surrounding disciples all made way for him, their gazes fixed on Xiaochen's back. At this moment, on Qingyan Peak, the ponytailed girl whose identity medallion Xiaochen had stolen was looking at Qingyan Peak's manager, Lu Suifeng, with misty eyes. There was a group of female disciples beside Lu Suifeng, talking about what happened. Her identity medallion had been stolen by Xiaochen, and she was very anxious. Fortunately, she met a group of fellow disciples who were going to enter the mountain. When that group of sisters found out about what happened to her, they immediately rode on a flying beast and flew to Qingyan Peak. They wanted Lu Suifeng to seek justice for them. After Lu Suifeng heard this, he muttered, "You are saying that a fellow disciple wearing white clothes recognized Qingyan Peak's secret technique with one glance and casually broke it? Furthermore, he snatched your identity medallion?" Leng Qianqian nodded gently and said in a wronged manner, "That senior brother was a bully. Not only did he snatch my identity medallion, he even said that I had not practiced well enough, and that I needed to continue working hard." Lu Suifeng said angrily, "How preposterous! Since when can others speak ill of the people of my Qingyan Peak? Stop crying and follow me down the mountain. Let's find that fellow and see elder brother Suifeng help you vent your anger." The group of female disciples followed Lu Suifeng and quickly headed down the mountain. Xiaochen climbed all the way from the foot of Qingyan Peak. He felt very rueful. Back then there were very few people on Qingyan Peak. It was hard to see anyone on the huge peak. But now, with just a few steps, he could see some disciples either practicing or chatting. There were even disciples guarding the key passages, so Xiaochen had no choice but to use some techniques to avoid them. What surprised him the most was that these disciples were all young women with voluptuous figures. He didn't see a single male disciple. Leng Qianqian, who had followed Lu Suifeng down, had just reached the middle of the mountain when she saw Xiaochen, who had a relaxed expression as he looked around. He quickly pointed at Xiaochen and said to Lu Suifeng, "Elder brother Suifeng, he is the one who snatched my medallion. Now he is here at our Qingyan Peak." Lu Suifeng was greatly startled as he said, "This brat is too arrogant. After snatching your medallion, he still dares to come to our Qingyan Peak. Come follow me. Watch me teach this brat a lesson." Under Lu Suifeng's lead, the group of female disciples rushed down aggressively. Soon, they arrived before Xiaochen. When they got close, Lu Suifeng saw Xiaochen's face. His eyes were filled with astonishment. His rushing footsteps immediately stopped. Later, a few of the girls could not react in time. A few of them knocked into his back. "Elder brother Suifeng, why aren't you moving? Go and teach him a lesson. He personally scolded me for not practicing the profound wind chop well. You were the one who taught me all my martial techniques." Lu Suifeng's earlier anger vanished. He smiled somewhat embarrassedly. "I can't teach this fellow a lesson. Brother Suifeng, it's been a long time." Lu Suifeng stepped forward and patted Xiaochen's shoulder. He smiled and said, "You are finally willing to come back. Return the medallion to the young lady." Lu Suifeng took the medallion from Xiaochen's hand and handed it to Leng Qianqian. He said, "I can't teach this fellow a lesson. However, someone else can. You all can leave first." Leng Qianqian received the medallion. She had a confused expression. It was not just her. The group of female disciples behind her were all confused as well. Didn't Lu Suifeng say that he would help Leng Qianqian get revenge? Why was he suddenly chatting and laughing with this person? "Elder brother Suifeng, who is this person?" one of the girls asked, feeling confused. Lu Suifeng smiled and said, "This is the white-robed bladesman that you all keep talking about. Xiaochen, you can all leave now." When the group of girls heard Lu Suifeng's words, the way they looked at Xiaochen immediately changed. It was like they could see stars twinkling in their eyes. Xiaochen could not stand this gaze. He quickly pulled Lu Suifeng to a rather desolate cliff on Qingyan Peak and asked what was going on. Lu Suifeng giggled and said, "These girls are all your admirers. It is all thanks to you that they are able to do so. Thanks to you, the battle at the Heaven Ascending platform 2 years ago spread the name of our Qingyan Peak. In the second year, several outer disciples came to Qingyan Peak. Now Qingyun Peak is no longer the weakest of the 7 main peaks of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Although its accumulations are not as deep as Tianyue Peak, it is full of youthful energy. Every year, there will be a large number of new disciples. There will be an endless stream of new blood. Sooner or later, it will become the top peak of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Xiaochun was mildly surprised. He had not expected his battle that day to bring about such a huge change to Qingyun Peak. However, this was a good thing. There was no need to fear more. Only when Qingyun Peak truly developed would Lu Ruyue be able to put down the burden in her heart and be with him. Suddenly, Xiaochun thought of something. He asked, "Why do the disciples in this mountain look like young girls? There is not a single man to be seen." Lu Suifeng said righteously, "You really have to thank me for this. I only take in female disciples for your sake. As your brother-in-law, I have the responsibility to guard this place for you. I cannot let other men get close to my sister." Xiaochun smiled and said, "I see those girls calling you elder brother Suifeng. Do you sound like you enjoy it? Are you really doing this for my sake?" Lu Suifeng coughed twice and said, "Let's not talk about this. I'll bring you to meet my sister. She should be at the dueling grounds now." "Greetings, instructor." "Greetings, instructor Suifeng." As the two of them walked, the female disciples they met would respectfully greet Lu Suifeng as instructor. As Lu Suifeng walked, he explained, "Don't look at me like that. Actually, Elder Sis is the one teaching most of the martial techniques. I am just assisting her." Xiaochun shook his head and said, "With your strength, it should not be a problem for you to teach these 14 or 15-year-old girls." In these 2 years, Lu Suifeng's strength had undergone a metamorphosis. He had advanced from inferior grade martial saint to peak superior grade martial saint. He was only a step away from breaking through the barrier to martial king. Such strength would be considered at the peak among the younger generation of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Even in the entire Great Qin nation, it would be considered top-notch. However, when compared to the entire continent, especially during the budding age of geniuses, it would not be considered top-notch. However, no matter what, with Lu Suifeng's current strength as a peak martial saint, it was more than enough to teach these martial Grand Master female disciples. Lu Suifeng said seriously, "It is all thanks to that flowing light marigold leaf of yours. The further you go, the more you will understand the importance of comprehension." As they spoke, the dueling grounds soon appeared before the two of them. This dueling grounds was not unfamiliar to Xiaochun. Back when he was at Qingyun Peak, he would spend most of his time there. "Go in by yourself. I will not stay to accompany you." After sending Xiaochun off, Lu Suifeng performed a cup-fist salute and took his leave. When Xiaochun pushed open the doors of the dueling grounds, he saw that the previously empty dueling grounds was now filled with people. There were 200 to 300 Qingyun Peak female disciples lined up neatly. They were like white poplar trees standing in the middle of the grounds. In front of them, Lu Ruyue was explaining some of the unique martial techniques of Qingyun Peak. Occasionally, she would answer the questions of the disciples. She wore tight-fitting blue cultivator robes, revealing her exquisite and graceful figure. 2 years had not left any mark on her face. She was the same as before. Every movement she made was graceful and flawless. Xiaochun stopped walking and revealed a faint smile. He leaned against the door and watched with interest. Seeing Lu Ruyue's expression, Xiaochun felt a faint satisfaction in his heart. For a moment he did not have any other thoughts in his mind. Lu Ruyue, who was completely focused, did not sense Xiaochun's arrival. She continued to explain the unique points of Qingyun Peak's martial techniques. When Lu Ruyue got excited, she would draw the small saber at her waist and demonstrate it personally. She wanted these young girls to understand the profound things in simple terms. This month's 3 days of lessons will end here. When you go back, remember to work harder. If there is anything you do not understand, remember to communicate with your fellow disciples. 2 hours later, Lu Ruyue waved her hand and dismissed the 200-odd female disciples. After the crowd dispersed, Lu Ruyue's spirited face finally revealed some fatigue. Just as she was about to leave, Lu Ruyue's spirited face revealed a trace of fatigue. Just as she was about to leave, her gaze suddenly landed on Xiaochun, who was standing at the door. Her body paused, thinking that she had seen wrong. After looking carefully, she was certain that the bladesman wearing white clear wind robes with a meteor-shaped lunar shadow saber at his waist was Xiao Chen. Lu Ruyue put down what she was doing and walked over quickly. Tears gathered in her eyes. She still could not believe that the person in front of her was Xiao Chen. Lu Ruyue slowly raised her fair and slender right hand and moved it towards Xiao Chen's face. She really wanted to know if what she saw was an illusion or not. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and grabbed Lu Ruyue's wrist. Then he naturally pulled her into his embrace. There were many things he wanted to say in his heart. However, when the words reached his mouth, he did not know what to say. He could only mutter, "I'm back." A familiar person, a familiar smell, a familiar voice. Lu Ruyue finally believed that the person she was thinking of was indeed in front of her. "How have you been these 2 years?" Lu Ruyue asked softly as she let go of Xiao Chen's embrace and blushed slightly. "Let's go out first. There are too many people here." Holding Lu Ruyue's hand, Xiao Chen led her out of the door. Lu Suifeng, who was eavesdropping with a group of female disciples, was the first to bear the brunt of the door slamming into his face. Chapter 546. "Damn, there is no need to be so ruthless," Lu Suifeng said depressedly as he rubbed his face. "Instructor Suifeng, was that person earlier really the white-robed bladesman? I heard that back then. He was not as strong as you, right? How strong is he now? I heard someone say that he scared away 5 Biyun Peak elders by himself. That Biyun Peak's peak master, Song Qianhe, did not even have the ability to stand before him." The girls fired questions at Lu Suifeng. If it were anyone else, they would not have been able to endure it. However, Lu Suifeng chuckled and surrounded the girls. He said calmly, "Don't be in such a rush. Ask them one by one. Let me tell you everything from the beginning." At the same time, the news of Xiao Chen's return to Qingyun Peak spread like wildfire throughout the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, the story of Xiao Chen's encounter with Biyun Peak's Song Qianhe was recounted vividly. In the end, he even scared away 5 superior grade martial kings. When they thought of the legendary battle from 2 years ago, and saw the strength that Xiao Chen displayed today, several cultivators of the same generation as Xiao Chen sighed. At the edge of a small cliff on Qingyun Peak, Xiao Chen and Lu Ruyue leaned against a rock. There was a waterfall in front of the cliff. The sound of water splashing could be heard continuously. The wind blew past the two of them as Xiao Chen spoke softly about his encounters in the past 2 years. He told Lu Ruyue everything he had experienced since he left the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. From the first time Lu Ruyue saw Xiao Chen, she had already guessed that Xiao Chen's future accomplishments would not stop at the Great Qin Nation. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion could not hold him back. However, she had not expected that the stage that Xiao Chen wanted would be so big. Xiao Chen was not very eloquent. What should have been a very exciting experience sounded very ordinary when he spoke about it. This was similar to his low-profile character. Lu Ruyue squinted her eyes slightly. However, she was very engrossed in listening, carefully savoring every word. She was the only one who could understand the thrill and danger that Xiao Chen was facing from Xiao Chen's calm tone. Time passed by unknowingly. The sound of the wind and the sound of water lingered in their ears. Xiao Chen shrugged slightly and smiled. "Tell me about yourself. How have you been doing these past 2 years?" What Lu Ruyue said was exactly the same as what Lu Suifeng said. After he left, Qingyun Peak developed very quickly in the 2nd year. In the past 2 years, she had to guide Lu Suifeng to teach the new disciples during the day and cultivate by herself at night. Every day could be said to be extremely busy. Even so, Lu Ruyue managed to become a peak superior grade martial king. This showed how strong her talent was. If not for Xiao Chen being over 24 years old, he would not have any problems passing the preliminaries of this 5-nation youth competition. Lu Ruyue asked with some anticipation. "How long do you intend to stay here this time?" Xiao Chen thought for a while before replying, "About 2 months. There is still half a year before the 5-nation youth competition begins. I still have to do some things for the Xiao clan." When the sky turned completely dark, Xiao Chen reluctantly said goodbye to Lu Ruyue and returned to his courtyard. The stars were resplendent in the night sky. Xiao Chen practiced the four-season saber technique in the courtyard. At the same time, he comprehended the state of the fourth and final move. Spring uses thunder, summer uses fire, autumn uses rain. However, he could not think of what to use in winter as a catalyst. If he followed Bai Shuihe's style, winter would naturally use snow, using the state of extreme cold to seal the world in ice. Xiao Chen did not want to follow Bai Shuihe's style. He wanted to create his own four-season saber technique. Hence, he could not use snow as a catalyst. Hua, hua, hua. Under the influence of Xiao Chen's saber intent, the fallen leaves in the courtyard formed a ball in the air at some point in time. As Xiao Chen sheathed his saber, the ball of fallen leaves immediately exploded. The remnant saber intent still lingered on the fallen leaves. When it burst out, it created thousands of holes of various sizes in the surrounding ground. The first elder, Jiangqi, had just entered the courtyard. When he stepped on the ground, a dull explosion immediately came from the ground. There seemed to be 10 odd sharp saber intents under the sturdy ground. They all formed a formation and started circulating their cultivation techniques. With a loud bang, under the astonished gazes of the first elder and the others, the ground of the courtyard suddenly exploded, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The countless fallen leaves hidden in the dust were still spinning. A misty saber intent spread out, causing the weapon in Jiangqi's hand to buzz and tremble. It really is saber intent. The first elder, Jiangqi, exclaimed excitedly as he held the trembling weapon in his hand and looked at the spinning fallen leaves in the air. Jiangqi had advanced to half-step martial monarch many years ago. Even with the vast resources of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he had not been able to break through to martial monarch. He might not have any hope of becoming a martial monarch in this lifetime. However, as a half-step martial monarch, Jiangqi relied on the vast resources to temper himself, becoming an unrivaled existence. If Xiao Chen had not comprehended saber intent, Jiangqi would have an 80% chance of defeating Xiao Chen. However, now that Xiao Chen comprehended saber intent, Jiangqi did not even have a 60% chance. Something like saber intent did not depend on one's cultivation realm or cultivation. It only depended on one's comprehension ability. Some people might not be able to comprehend saber intent even after becoming a martial sage. However, some people might be able to comprehend saber intent as a martial saint. Only by comprehending saber intent could a bladesman be considered a complete bladesman. First elder, Xiao Chen said respectfully with a cupped fist salute as he leaped over the flying soil and arrived beside Jiangqi. Jiangqi had done Xiao Chen a favor. Furthermore, it was not an ordinary favor. It was a favor of saving his life. Even though Xiao Chen's strength surpassed Jiangqi's, he did not dare to show any disrespect. When Jiangqi saw Xiao Chen's attitude, he felt very satisfied. He carefully sized up Xiao Chen and sighed softly. "You are old. 2 years ago, you were just a peak martial saint. In merely 2 years, you actually advanced to half-step martial monarch. You are no weaker than me. You are so young, and you even comprehended saber intent. Your future is limitless." Xiao Chen shook his head and said, "My saber intent is not worth mentioning. It has not reached small perfection. If it had reached small perfection, the remnant saber intent on the fallen leaf would have returned to the saber the instant I withdrew my saber." Indeed, Xiao Chen was still far from achieving small perfection in saber intent. The first elder, Jiangqi, smiled faintly and chatted with Xiao Chen. He cleverly did not mention Xiao Chen's oath. "Xiao Chen, actually, I have a presumptuous request this time. Can you represent the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in this 5-nation youth competition?" After hesitating for a while, Jiangqi finally stated his purpose for coming here. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion had its own branch in Desolate City. However, it was not as big as the other sections. Hence, the first elder, Jiangqi, was not like the other disciples of the sect. He did not know anything about Xiao Chen after he left. Jiangqi was very clear about Xiao Chen's achievements in the ancient desolate land. He knew that Xiao Chen could rival the demonic geniuses of the Great Jin Nation. With Xiao Chen's strength, he would not have any problems entering the top 50. If such a person could represent the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, the benefits would be immeasurable. Xiao Chen thought for a while and made a decision in his heart. He nodded and said, I will gladly do so. I came from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in the first place. Furthermore, the first elder saved my life. Since you think highly of me, Xiaochen will naturally do his best. Xiaochen agreed so straightforwardly. Jiangqi was stunned. He only reacted after a while. He smiled and said, Good, good, good. Your pure heart has not changed. Don't worry. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion cannot compare to those rich and powerful factions. However, the resources you deserve will not be lacking. Jiangqi laughed loudly and said good 3 times in a row. He was clearly in a carefree mood. The next day, Jiangqi ordered people to deliver 3 boxes. The first box contained 10,000 inferior-grade spirit stones. The second box contained 10,000 medial-grade spirit stones. When Xiaochen opened the third box, he immediately felt a vast amount of spiritual energy. Unexpectedly, it was filled with superior-grade spirit stones. Furthermore, there were 10,000 of them. Even Xiaochen was somewhat astonished. He knew about the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's foundation. Taking out 10,000 superior-grade spirit stones in one go was truly a huge investment. Xiaochen smiled faintly and put away the spirit stones. Although there were not many resources, they were timely help. Xiaochen was now truly poor. He had exhausted all his resources in the boundless sea. He was in urgent need of resources. However, inferior-grade spirit stones and medial-grade spirit stones were already useless to him. Xiaochen handed them over to Lu Ruyue for the night. After Xiaochen received the spirit stones, it meant that he could not go back on his word. So, after another day, the news that Xiaochen would represent the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in the 5-nation youth competition spread. Under Jiangqi's purposeful control, this news spread throughout the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. When all the disciples heard this news, they were all extremely excited. They had not expected that Xiaochen, who had been forced out of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, would return to help them. During the days on Qingyan Peak, Xiaochen adjusted his mentality. He allowed himself to relax during the day, accompanying Lu Ruyue as she walked around. Occasionally he would teach the juniors of Qingyan Peak. On the 15th of the 7th month, 1 month had passed since Xiaochen arrived at Qingyan Peak. On this day, something major happened in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Even the Elders' Assembly's Jiangqi was startled. The previous top genius, Morongcheng, had returned as well. The 5-nation youth competition would begin in half a year. Furthermore, this 5-nation youth competition might open the door to the upper realm. Not only the 5 great nations, but also the Great Jin, Chu, Great Tang, Great Xia, and Great Qin, the ancient desolate land, the surrounding barbarians, and the vast boundless sea. All the genius cultivators and demonic geniuses under the starry heavens would participate. The 5-nation youth competition would usher in an unprecedented grand occasion. The germinal organization of cultivators might lose the word germinal because of this battle, ushering in a grand age of tens of thousands of cultivators. In this era of great competition, everything would be reshuffled. This was not only an opportunity for cultivators to stand out, it was also an opportunity for sections. At this crucial moment, Morongcheng returned. Naturally, the management of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion was very excited. Back then, Morongcheng was the top genius of the Shihe province. No one could compare to him. 3 years ago, he was already a superior-grade martial saint. However, because he lost to Xiaochen in one move, he had to go on experiential training. Chapter 547. The people of the Elders' Assembly originally thought that with Morongcheng's talent, he would have been poached away by the other sects long ago. They did not expect him to return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. However, he also had some misgivings in his heart. He was afraid that after this Morongcheng was defeated by Xiaochen, he fell to the bottom of the valley and was unable to rise again. As for the ordinary people, they could not catch the attention of the other great sections. That was why they returned to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Thus, the elders led by Jiangqi immediately received Morongcheng. They wanted to gauge his strength. On Qingyan Peak, Xiaochen heard from Lu Suifeng that Morongcheng had returned. He felt somewhat surprised. Unlike the people from the Elders' Assembly, Xiaochen clearly knew that Morongcheng was not the kind of cultivator who would collapse after suffering a setback. With Xiaochen's talent, he would definitely be valued by the other great sections. To be able to resist such a temptation and return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Morongcheng was also on the same path. Lu Sui said, "He is probably back for the Five-Nation Youth Competition. If there are no surprises, he will definitely come and look for you tonight." Xiaochen smiled softly and said, "I have not seen him for more than 2 years. I am indeed looking forward to seeing how much he has grown." Lu Suifeng sighed softly. The requirements for the Five-Nation Youth Competition will probably be higher this time around. You might need to be at least a Martial King to register. Any cultivator would definitely want to go and take a look at the Five-Nation Youth Competition. Even if they did not rank high, they would be able to broaden their horizons by going. Naturally, Lu Suifeng was no exception. Unfortunately, he was stuck at the bottleneck of a Martial King. There was still half a year left, and it would be difficult for him to overcome it. With a thought, Xiaochen casually took out 1,000 superior-grade spirit stones and handed them to Lu Suifeng. He said, "Use these superior-grade spirit stones to cultivate for the next half a year. When you officially make your breakthrough, I'll help you find some natural treasures. You have to build a good foundation for breaking through to Martial King." Xiaochen had experienced breaking through the barrier of Martial King before. One had to have a firm and solid foundation. Otherwise, even if one broke through, they would only be an ordinary Martial King. A person's foundation was determined by the cultivation technique they practiced, the grade of the spirit stones they usually used, the heavenly treasures they used when making a breakthrough, and their own bones. Xiaochen could not help Lu Suifeng with regards to his aptitude and cultivation technique. However, he could still think of a way to obtain good spirit stones and natural treasures. Lu Suifeng rejected. "How can I do that? You already gave us so many spirit stones. Furthermore, it would be a waste for me to use superior grade spirit stones now." Xiaochen advised, "Don't be afraid of wasting. Even if you waste a large amount of yuan qi in the upper rank spirit stones, the effect is still much better than the middle rank spirit stones and the lower rank spirit stones. Don't worry about this when you are breaking through." Naturally, it was a great waste to use superior grade spirit stones when one was a martial saint. However, there was no need to care about this when making a breakthrough. Under Xiaochen's repeated persuasion, Lu Suifeng finally accepted the 1,000 upper spiritual stones. The moon hung above the treetops, illuminating the land. It was late at night. Inside the courtyard, Xiaochen held his saber hilt with his right hand as he looked at the fallen leaves in the courtyard, deep in thought. Pooh! Xiaochen drew his saber by 1 centimeter. The pitch-black saber instantly glowed with a purple light. A sharp saber intent spread out, creating a boundless strong wind. The strong wind blew the fallen leaves down, causing them to dance in the courtyard. They rose and fell, falling heavily. Kasie. When Xiaochen drew the lunar shadow saber, a boundless saber intent soared into the sky. All the fallen leaves immediately buzzed and spun in the air. With the support of the saber intent, the normally light fallen leaves had turned into a sharp killing weapon. A regular martial saint would not be able to block it, and would end up covered in wounds. Withdraw. In an instant, the lunar shadow saber returned to its scabbard at lightning speed. The spinning leaves suddenly stopped and fell back to the ground. Xiaochen revealed a satisfied expression. He said softly, "After 1 month, although I still have not figured out what to take for winter, my saber intent has finally reached small perfection. I can release and withdraw it as I please." Huchi. Just at this moment, a strong wind blew in the courtyard. A cold saber intent spread out in the strong wind. The fallen leaves that had just fallen were suddenly swept up again. The fallen leaves spun and buzzed. They were like thousands of blades flying in the sky, heading for Xiaochen. Xiaochen smiled faintly. His right hand, which was holding the saber, moved quickly. A sharp saber intent gushed out as he drew his saber. Under the influence of Xiaochen's saber intent, the falling leaves that filled the sky started spinning anti-clockwise. Bang! 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 Under the pressure of the 2 saber intents, the falling leaves in the air could not withstand such a strong force. They all exploded, turning into countless shards and falling down like rain. When the dust settled, a thick layer of broken leaves covered the empty space in the courtyard. Xiaochen looked to the front. Morongcheng, dressed in black, stood on the walls of the courtyard, holding a scarlet saber in his hand. Morongcheng's aura was like a sharp saber, radiating a sharp light as he stood proudly in the sky. The two withdrew their sabers at the same time. Morongcheng's figure flashed, and he landed on the ground. Then he casually walked over to the stone table in the courtyard. However, Morongcheng's gaze remained fixed on Xiaochen. There was a faint shock in the depths of his eyes, but he hid it very well. After a long time, Morongcheng sighed. After not seeing you for more than 2 years, I originally thought that I could defeat you easily. Who knew? I still cannot see through you. Xiaochen said softly. It is the same for you. Not only have you reached half-step martial monarch, but you have also comprehended saber intent. In the end, Morongcheng did not fall. Morongcheng smiled and said, Why did you come back? With your talent, there should have been a super sect that extended an olive branch to you. Xiaochen said calmly, I am the same as you. Whatever reason you have, I have. With the talent of the two of them, the small mountain that was the Heavenly Saber Pavilion could not hold them back. However, the two of them were people who knew how to repay favors. They hoped to use this opportunity to repay the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's kindness. If one asked for the reason, there was no need to say it. 3 days from now, I will be waiting for you on the heaven viewing platform. We will only compete in the saber. Morongcheng enunciated every word. The battle 2 years ago was Morongcheng's greatest defeat in the past 20-odd years. He had lost to a newcomer in front of thousands of people in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. In that battle, not only had he lost his position as the top disciple of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he had also lost the love he had hidden in his heart forever. Morongcheng was not someone who haggled over every ounce. However, he had his pride. Naturally, he had to think of a way to take back what he had lost. Xiaochen accepted the other party's challenge without any fear. He said calmly, Sure. We will meet on the heaven ascending platform 3 days from now. As you said, we will only compete in the saber. Early the next morning, the news of Morongcheng challenging Xiaochen quickly spread throughout the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Back then, it was also on the heaven viewing platform. The classic battle between Xiaochen and Morongcheng was still vivid in the minds of many disciples. The two moons competed with each other, the winds blew, the clouds churned, and the sky changed color. Now 2 years later, the two of them had their own accomplishments. They would fight again in the same place with their own glory. Would Morongcheng defeat Xiaochen and reclaim his position as the top disciple of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion? Or would Xiaochen win again, suppressing Morongcheng? Before it started, the many Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciples were filled with anticipation for this battle. 3 days passed in a flash. Back at Xiaochen's residence, Lu Ruyue said, Are we really not going? Xiaochen held Lu Ruyue's hand and smiled faintly. There is really no need. We are only competing in the saber. It is not a true battle to the death. It can't even be considered a true exchange of pointers. Competing in the saber, this was a term used by bladesmen. The literal meaning was when two people attacked at the same time to see whose saber was stronger. It sounded very simple, but it was incomparably complicated when it came to actual operation. The instant the saber left the hand, not only did it contain essence, but it also contained the cultivator's state and saber intent. Under normal circumstances, when competing with a bladesman who comprehended saber intent, it would be useless, no matter how strong the first two were. However, Morongcheng and Xiaochen both comprehended saber intent. It was hard to say who was stronger. However, Xiaochen was very confident in himself. Aside from saber intent, his state of massacre and state of thunder had already reached their limits. As his cultivation increased, they would continue to grow stronger. Furthermore, the essence in Xiaochen's body was terrifyingly pure. He had used countless natural treasures and tempered himself with a heaven-ranked cultivation technique. Furthermore, he had the spirit-gathering pearls. It would be hard for anyone in the same generation to be stronger than him. No matter what fortuitous encounters Morongcheng had, he would not be able to compare to Xiaochen. Unless he was the proud disciple of a super sect, born with countless natural treasures and had cultivated more than 10 years more than Xiao Qin. He would barely be able to surpass him. However, as time went by, the gap between these demonic geniuses and Xiao Qin would shrink. In the end, he would surpass them all. Don't worry, just wait for my good news. Xiao Qin let go of Lu Ruyue and soared into the sky, disappearing from Lu Ruyue's sight in the blink of an eye. As Lu Ruyue watched Xiao Qin leave, she bit her lips and revealed a contemplative look. Not too long ago, when Xiao Qin first came to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he needed to be protected under her wings. However, in merely 2 years, he had completely surpassed her. Lu Ruyue withdrew her gaze and revealed a determined expression. She muttered to herself, "It looks like I have to take some time out to temper myself. Otherwise, if this little fellow surpasses me by too much, it will be too embarrassing." Many disciples had already received the news, and were already waiting in the huge drill grounds of the heaven viewing platform. The sun above their heads was scorching hot, but it still could not resist the enthusiasm of the crowd. The discussions had not stopped since the beginning. Who do you think will win? 2 years ago, the two of them were evenly matched. Xiao Qin barely won. It is hard to say. I heard that Morongchong is already a half-step martial monarch. Xiao Qin is also a half-step martial monarch. However, he only revealed a move that day and did not see his exact strength. However, the two of them are competing in the saber and not in a true duel. They should be able to determine the victor very quickly. Let's just wait and see. Hee, whoever's saber is stronger, it means that they are stronger. 2 years ago, before the duel between Xiao Qin and Morongchong, all the cultivators were leaning towards Morongchong, believing that Xiao Qin would not be able to win. 2 years later, this duel was filled with uncertainty. No one dared to say who would win. Chapter 548. The 12 elite elders of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Elders Assembly were gathered on the tall platform. They did not want to miss out on this duel either. As of now, Xiao Qin and Morongchong were no weaker than them. Several of the elders were not even as strong as the two of them. An elder with very small eyes sighed softly. We are really getting old. Only in this budding age of geniuses can there be geniuses growing so fast. Unfortunately, we are all old. We are destined to be spectators. Haha. To be able to be a spectator and witness the geniuses of geniuses is pretty good. My life is not in vain. Indeed, our Heavenly Saber Pavilion already has 2 geniuses. In that case, how many geniuses are there in the entire starry heavens? When they all mature, the geniuses of geniuses will descend. What kind of majestic scene will appear in the world? The first elder, Jiangqi, smiled faintly and said, "What is the point of saying all this? After all, these 2 geniuses have agreed to fight for our Heavenly Saber Pavilion. When the time comes, our Heavenly Saber Pavilion will only rise up." Xiao. 2 sharp figures flew over from the east and west of the drill grounds. They were extremely fast and landed in the blink of an eye. They are here. Morongchong and Xiao Qin are here. The people in the spectator stands who had been waiting for a long time immediately burst into an uproar. Morongchong looked at his surroundings and his thoughts drifted back to 2 years ago. The scene back then was the same as now. There were no empty seats. Morongchong was originally in high spirits, wanting to take down Qingyan Peak in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, he lost. After more than 2 years, when he saw such a scene again, he could not help but feel rueful. Harboring a desire to win, Morongchong's sharp gaze was like a knife as he looked at Xiao Qin. He said in a clear voice, "Xiao Qin, one saber strike to decide victory." "As you wish." The two of them placed their right hands on their saber hilts at the same time. A boundless aura, state aura, and saber intent started to gather. Morongchong activated his state of wind, and a strong wind blew behind him, kicking up a boundless cloud of dust. The white clouds above him churned endlessly. For a moment, the wind and clouds surged, and the world changed color. Xiao Qin activated the state of slaughter, and the state of thunder. Black thunderclouds appeared above his head, and muffled thunderclaps resounded. The entire place rumbled endlessly, causing everyone's ears to buzz. Behind him, a blood-red radiance overflowed crazily. That was the will of massacre spreading. Under the strong state of the two, before the sabers were drawn, the world had already turned dark. The aura of the impending battle made everyone hold their breath. They did not even dare to breathe heavily. Clang clang. Two resonant hums rang out. Morongchong and Xiaochen drew their weapons at the same time. The saber intents that they had been accumulating for a long time burst forth. The sabers hummed endlessly, and the saber intent reverberated endlessly. Then it quickly spread out. The weapons in the hands of the thousands of cultivators immediately trembled, ready to be unsheathed at any moment. Xiao. The two of them moved as fast as lightning. The lunar shadow saber and the scarlet saber in Morongchong's hands flew out at the same time, spinning towards each other. Huchi. Huchi. The two sabers gave off a bright light. As they spun, a bright light spread out. Everywhere the weapons passed, cracks appeared in the ground, spreading out continuously. The thousands of cultivators in the crowd all cried out in alarm. When the two saber intents clashed, they could no longer control the weapons in their hands. They all flew into the air. Thousands of sabers of all sorts were pulled into the air by the two king weapons of Xiaochen and Morongchong. They clashed endlessly. It was a spectacular sight. However, everyone's attention was not on that at all. Their eyes were fixed on the two rotating long sabers in the field without blinking. The speed of the sabers was incomparably fast. If Morongchong raised his head, victory would be decided in the next moment. Dang! Under the watchful eyes of thousands of people, the two majestic sabers finally collided. The two cracks on the ground also connected with a loud bang at this moment. Kasi. The entire ground of the drill ground was instantly split into two halves, shocking everyone present. Even the elders on the high platform couldn't sit still. Too strong. The strength of the genius cultivators now is beyond our imagination. However, Jiangqi had a smile on his face. He did not care that these two people were stronger than him. He said loudly, "Good. No matter who wins or loses, with such strength, our heavenly saber pavilion is destined to shine in the five-nation youth competition." Pusiai. Morongchong, who was standing proudly, paled and vomited a large mouthful of blood. The instant the scarlet saber that belonged to him clashed with the lunar shadow saber, cracks appeared on it. Then the cracks scattered and the scarlet saber shattered into countless pieces. Pusiai. Woo. Woo. Only a slender, pitch-black saber remained on the drill grounds, spinning continuously. The thousands of sabers spinning around the lunar shadow saber in the sky seemed to be telling everyone who the true king weapon was. Whose saber could truly command the thousands of sabers, the king of sabers. Xiaochen waved his hand, and the spinning lunar shadow saber turned into a beam of light and returned to its scabbard. Having lost the support of the saber intent, the thousands of sabers swaying endlessly in the sky also fell down like flowers scattered by a fairy. The vast drill grounds regained its calm. The strong wind stopped, the dust settled, the thunder stopped, and the fiery sunlight shone down once again. Only the 1,000-meter-long crack that split the drill grounds in half remained in the calm drill grounds. It was a testament to the crazy scene from earlier. Saber intent, two peak states, and the aura of a martial monarch. These two are not ordinary half-step martial monarchs. Up on the platform, the first elder, Jiangqi, said sullenly, "We need to re-evaluate their strength." Second elder, "Bring some people to communicate with Morongchong. Tell him to give him the highest treatment for a genius. I will personally speak to Xiaochen." The remaining elders all looked at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. If they gave Morongchong the highest treatment for a genius, then wouldn't they give Xiaochen an even higher treatment? It would be the same as the young sect master's treatment. Don't just stand there. Quickly do as I say. This concerns the 100-year plan of our heavenly saber pavilion. If anyone makes a mistake, they can forget about their position in the elders' assembly. Jiangqi snorted coldly. When he saw the elders not moving, he scolded them in a serious tone. The second elder did not dare to delay. He quickly said, I'll go immediately. After 15 minutes, Xiaochen, who was preparing to fly up, received a message from a young disciple. The young disciple said that the first elder was waiting for him in the hidden treasure pavilion. The hidden treasure pavilion was the place where the heavenly saber pavilion had accumulated for tens of thousands of years. There were cultivation techniques, secret manuals, spirit weapons, battle armor, spirit stones, and all sorts of natural treasures. Of course, with the strength of the heavenly saber pavilion, its accumulations could not compare to the other great sections. Not to mention a super sect like the Haotian sect in the Great Jin Nation, the Heavenly Sword Gate in the Great Chu Nation, or the Thousand Sword Pavilion in the Great Xia Nation. Even the Heavenly Saber Pavilion paled in comparison. However, no matter what, the accumulation of a sect's inheritance and wealth would definitely make Xiao Chun sigh in amazement. The first elder, Jiang Qi, wanted to bring Xiao Chun to the hidden treasure pavilion. Naturally, his intentions were clear. He wanted to gain a new understanding of Xiao Chun's strength and wanted to rope him in. Xiao Chun understood this logic. However, he still felt it was strange. No matter what, he felt that the first elder, Jiang Qi, was a little too attentive. Xiao Chun had already agreed to fight for the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, he had accepted the 10,000 superior grade spirit stones from him. What did the first elder have to worry about? There was no need for him to give Xiao Chun any more benefits. Carrying such doubts, Xiao Chun followed the young disciple to the hidden treasure pavilion. The hidden treasure pavilion was an important place for any sect. Naturally, the security was very strict. Along the way, Xiao Chun saw many twists and turns. There were many twists and turns. Every checkpoint was guarded by the elite disciples of the Divine Saber Camp. Occasionally, there would be a few warships cruising through the air. When Xiao Chun arrived at the hidden treasure pavilion, he felt the aura of a martial monarch on the roof. That should be a supreme elder of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. With such tight security, it was easy to imagine the importance of the hidden treasure pavilion to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The first elder, Jiang Qi, had been waiting at the entrance for a long time. He waved his hand to dismiss the disciple leading the way. Then he walked over to Xiao Chun with a smile on his face. Haha, Xiao Chun, you should know why I brought you here, right? Xiao Chun nodded to indicate that he understood. Jiang Qi smiled and said, the strength that you and Morong Chong displayed far surpassed my expectations. The two of you have comprehended saber intent and two states. Furthermore, you have comprehended the two states to their limits. The next step would be wills. However, I think more highly of you. Do you know why? Jiang Qi answered his own question. Because you ascended to the 8th floor of the ancient desolate tower. That in itself represents a kind of luck. Now that you have returned to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you have unknowingly affected the luck of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Of course, it is a good influence. Let's cut the crap. Come with me. Jiang Qi raised his head and looked at the top of the pavilion. After a simple communication with the Supreme Elder there, the wooden doors with 18 layers of formations on them opened with a creak. The first floor was filled with gold and jade, shining with a dazzling light. At first glance, it was dazzling. It was somewhat dazzling. However, when one looked carefully, they discovered that they were all mundane items. There were gold, silver, jewels, jadeite, night pearls, gold, and precious stones. If an ordinary person took any one of these items, they would be able to enjoy glory and splendor for the rest of their lives. However, Jiang Qi and Xiao Chun did not even bother to look at them. They directly headed for the second floor. To them, these things were just worldly possessions. The items on the second floor started to look interesting. There were spirit weapon secret manuals and inferior grade spirit stones. However, Jiang Qi did not even bother to look at them. He knew that these things could not catch Xiao Chun's attention. The two continued to head up, past the third floor, then the fourth floor. Gradually, there were some things that tempted Xiao Chun. However, Jiang Qi did not stop. He kept going until he reached the 7th floor. If they went up another floor, they would reach the top floor of the hidden treasure pavilion. I can only bring you up to here. I have no way of going up to the next floor. Morong Chong can only bring me to the 6th floor. However, you can go to the 7th floor. Jiang Qi smiled gently. Chapter 549. Xiao Chun sized up the scenery of the 6th floor. Compared to the resplendent golden light of the first floor, this floor was very plain. All the treasures had their spiritual light withdrawn. If one looked carefully, one would be able to feel a faint spiritual aura filling every corner of the room. There were tables and cabinets made of platinum-glazed jade with all sorts of treasures on them. There were spirit cores of thousand-year-old spirit beasts, and demonic cores of thousand-year-old demonic beasts. These spirit beasts and demonic beasts were all very strong when they were alive. After they died, one could still feel intense energy fluctuations from the spirit cores and demonic cores. There were also rows of bookshelves filled with all sorts of cultivation techniques and martial techniques related to the saber. None of them were lower than earth ranked. These were obtained by the seniors of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion when they went out adventuring. When Xiao Chen looked further down, he even saw many exquisite brocade boxes containing white inferior grade spirit gathering pearls. In the past, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion had a martial sage, Emperor Wu. It was not strange for him to be able to refine spirit-gathering pearls. However, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion no longer had a martial sage. Every time they used a spirit-gathering pearl, there would be one less. They could only treat it as a treasure and hide it. There were 10 different types of sabers on the weapons rack. All of them had a bright glow. Occasionally, they would spit out a strong saber light. This was the mark of a heaven-ranked spirit weapon. When Jiang Qi, who was at the side, saw Xiao Chen looking at the weapons rack, he said proudly, "Xiao Chen, these are the 10 heaven-ranked spirit weapons that my Heavenly Saber Pavilion has accumulated over 10,000 years. One of them is even a superior-grade heaven-ranked spirit weapon. I see that your Lunar Shadow Saber is only a superior-grade Earth-ranked spirit weapon. Just pick one." Using a heaven-ranked spirit weapon to replace the Lunar Shadow Saber? Xiao Chen smiled faintly and shook his head in rejection. What a joke. The Lunar Shadow Saber was once a subdivine weapon. Although it was only a superior-grade Earth-ranked spirit weapon now, as long as Ao Jiao finished nourishing it, it would immediately become a heaven-ranked spirit weapon. In the future, when he found the corresponding materials, he could recover it to a subdivine weapon. If he had enough opportunities with Ao Jiao's guidance, it might even become a new divine weapon. How could Xiao Chen exchange it? Jiang Qi was stunned for a while. Clearly, he had not expected Xiao Chen to reject his suggestion so decisively. However, this was fine as well. Coincidentally, Murong Chang's weapon was damaged. If he gave it to Xiao Chen, it would be very suitable. Then he said, "It is up to you. Whatever you like, just take it." First, Xiao Chen said, "Xiao is spirit. Great Elder. Aren't you afraid that I'll empty your entire building?" Divine Spirit Xiao Chen SS, Spirit Xiao, and Spirit Xiao Xiao Spirit. Chen S Spirit up. Xiao 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 to. Xiao. Chen Xiao Xiao up. Xiao Xiao. Xiao. Xiao Chen was the kind of person who knew how to repay favors. The more he took, the more he would owe the Heavenly Saber Pavilion a favor. The greater the favor he owed, the greater the favor he would repay in the future. Hence, Jiang Qi was not afraid of Xiao Chen taking too much. He was only afraid that Xiao Chen would look down on them and take too little. Of course, it was impossible for Xiao Chen to take everything. In the end, he took 100 inferior grade spirit gathering pearls, 50,000 superior grade spirit stones, 1,000-year-old rank 9 lightning attributed demonic beasts lightning core, and a lightning tribulation saber technique. This lightning tribulation saber technique was a peak earth-ranked saber technique. It was a saber technique that the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder comprehended. It was weaker than the Four-Season saber technique, but stronger than the Wuxia saber technique. The Four-Season saber technique was used as a trump card. This lightning tribulation saber technique was used to deal with enemies, to hide his strength. The things that Xiao Chen took were within Jiang Qi's expectations. He smiled and said, "Let's go. I will bring you to Jade Maiden Peak to choose some 1,000-year-old spirit herbs." After they left the Treasury Pavilion, the first elder, Jiang Qi, waved his hand, and a warship descended. Jiang Qi smiled and said, "Let's go." Xiao Chen hesitated for a while before saying, "First elder, you have already given me so many treasures. Leave the spirit herbs for the juniors and the elders to use." Jiang Qi laughed loudly and pulled Xiao Chen up. He said, "Don't overthink this. If you go to the other sects, they will give you even more. As I said, Since you chose the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, our Heavenly Saber Pavilion will do our best to nurture you. The two of them boarded the deck, and the warship immediately soared into the air, heading for Jade Maiden Peak. As the warship traveled through the clouds, the wind blew from both sides, causing Xiao Chen's and the First Elder's hair to flutter. Jiangqi muttered to himself for a while before saying, Xiao Chen, it seems like you do not know what the luck of the Five-Nation Youth Competition represents. Or perhaps, you do not know how valuable this luck is. Xiao Chen's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Jiangqi and asked, What do you mean? Honestly speaking, Xiao Chen did not know how valuable this luck was. He sincerely asked Jiangqi for guidance. After all, the other party was in charge of a sect. He would definitely know some secrets that Xiao Chen did not. Luck is something that sounds ethereal. There are no traces of it. However, it does exist. 20 years ago, my Heavenly Saber Pavilion was like the sun in the sky. However, we still suffered a great calamity in the end. In the end, it was because we did not have enough luck. If there is something substantial that represents luck, it would be the dragon vein. Dragon vein? Jiangqi continued. The dragon vein represents the luck of the world. There are 9 dragon veins in the world. Each of the 5 great nations subdued one. The royal courts of the various nations are super sects without any status. This is also why the people of the royal courts are not allowed to participate in the Five-Nation Youth Competition. They already possess great luck and cannot compete with the other sections. Xiao Chen felt curious. He asked, Where are the remaining 4 dragon veins now? Jiangqi said, Originally, you would not be able to know about this. However, you are now qualified to know. The 4 dragon veins are under the Great Jin Nation's Wind Cloud Arena. Back then, the last heavenly emperor of the Tianwu dynasty was too ambitious. He wanted to gather all 9 dragon veins. He wanted to obtain the luck of the entire great world and compete with the heavens, becoming immortal. He offended the 4 holy lands, resulting in a rank 9 demonic calamity and being destroyed. The escape of the 9 dragons through the spirit veins of the world into chaos, causing the density of the spiritual energy of the various great nations to plummet. Xiao Chen knew about this. However, he had not expected it to be related to the ambitions of the Tianwu dynasty. The demonic calamity that destroyed the Tianwu dynasty was actually caused by the 4 holy lands. Regular cultivators would not be able to imagine such a secret. In their eyes, the 4 holy lands were the representatives of righteousness, helping to seal spatial tears everywhere. Jiangqi smiled gently and said, Aside from the Great Jin Nation, the royal courts of the 5 great nations are all representatives of the 4 holy lands. Back then, the Tianwu dynasty was able to unify the continent because of the support of the 4 holy lands. The puppet that they supported was disobedient. They just had to find another one. Wang. Xiao Chen's heart trembled. He had not expected there to be such a secret. To think that the holy lands were so strong. Even someone as strong as the Tianwu emperor, a hero of his generation and famous for 10,000 years, was just a pawn in the hands of the holy lands. In that case, what was Xiao Chen now? He was not even qualified to be a pawn. Suddenly, Xiao Chen noticed a problem. Feeling it was strange, he asked, First Elder, you mentioned the 4 holy lands earlier. However, why are there only the 3 holy masters? The Phoenix's Passion Palace, the White Emperor City, and the Divine Martial Gate. Although the 3 holy masters were very mysterious, their names were not a secret. No matter how one counted, there were only 3. Jiangqi's expression changed. He knew that he had said too much. He smiled and said, You don't have to care about that. All you need to know is that the 4 dragon veins under the Wind Cloud Arena are a chance for all the sects to compete fairly. Whoever obtains a good ranking will obtain great luck. Furthermore, with the arrival of this great age, only 1 dragon vein would awaken at most. This time, it is possible that all 4 dragon veins will awaken. So once you obtain a good ranking, no matter how much I give you, it will be worth it. Seeing that Jiangqi was not willing to say more, Xiao Chen did not press on. He only thought to himself, one day, I will personally unravel these mysteries. I will figure out whether the blue dragon martial spirit represents the fallen Holy Land or not. Xiao Chen had once heard from Leng Yu that there were 3,000 great realms in the universe. The Tianwu continent was called the Sky Dome realm, but it was just an ordinary realm among the 3,000 great realms. The so-called upper realm was a high-level realm that ruled over the 3,000 great realms. It was called the Kunlun realm. Since then, Xiao Chen had a small guess in his heart. The so-called transmigration might not be a coincidence. Earth might have been one of the 3,000 great realms in the past. Of course, this was the deepest secret in Xiao Chen's heart. No matter who it was, he would not tell it. The only thing he could do now was to continuously become stronger, to increase his strength. Then he would personally unravel the mysteries. As they spoke, the fragrant Jade Maiden Peak appeared before the two of them. The warship flew towards a pavilion at the edge of a cliff on Jade Maiden Peak. The pavilion leaned against the cliff. Most of it floated in the air, looking like a pavilion in the air. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. He said, "This is Martial Grand Uncle Shun's place." Jiangqi nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. If you want to come to Jade Maiden Peak to obtain natural treasures, you have to get Martial Grand Uncle's permission. However, there should not be any problems. Don't worry." When the warship was a kilometer in the air, Jiangqi waved his hand and stopped the warship. Then he gently landed on the ground with Xiao Chen, not making a sound. Martial Grand Uncle Shun, Martial Nephew Jiangqi requests an audience. Jiangqi, the person in charge of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, was very respectful at this moment. The bamboo doors of the pavilion opened gently. The noble and dignified Shen Manjun, who looked like a young girl in her prime, walked out. Chu Xinyan followed carefully behind her. When Jiangqi saw Shen Manjun coming down from the bamboo stairs, he quickly went forward and explained the purpose of his visit. After Shen Manjun heard that, she looked at Xiao Chen with interest. She smiled and said, "Unexpectedly, the little fellow from 2 years ago has grown to such an extent. Xinyan, take my medallion and bring him to the 1,000-year-old herb fields. He can take whatever he likes." Xiao Chen bowed slightly and performed a cupped fist salute. "Many thanks, Martial Grand Uncle." When Xiao Chen met a regular martial monarch, he would at most perform a cupped fist salute and use honorifics. This was the rule of the continent. When the weak met the strong, they would do this. If one was careless, trouble might come from the mouth. One had to show the minimum amount of respect when facing the strong. However, when Xiao Chen saw Shen Manjun, he bowed. Actually, he should have guessed it long ago. A 300-year-old martial monarch was not rare. However, Shen Manjun did not look old, like a young girl in her prime. She was definitely a super expert with one foot in the martial sage realm. She was worthy of Xiao Chen's bow. Chapter 550. After Chu Xinyan received Shen Manjuan's medallion, she led Xiao Chen to the herb field. This time, Jiangqi did not follow. As Jiangqi watched Xiao Chen leave, he smiled and said, "Martial Uncle, what do you think of this person? Is he worthy of my nurturing?" Shen Manjuan's gaze was deep like a clear pool. She said in a drawn-out manner, "This person appears gentle on the surface, but he has a cold heart. He will not be easily swayed by external forces. He is self-centered and knows what he wants. He is decisive in killing, cold and emotionless." Jiangqi's smile froze. Could it be that I misjudged him? Shen Manjun changed the topic and smiled. However, it is fortunate that he has not changed. From the first time I saw him until now, his heart has not changed. He has seen the prosperity of the world and obtained boundless glory. He obtained 100 consecutive victories in the wrestling ring, reached the 8th floor of the ancient desolate tower, and became the strongest person in the 4 nations. However, he has always been himself. His heart has not changed. Jiangqi was somewhat at a loss as he said, "Martial Uncle, I do not understand." Shen Manjun smiled sweetly and turned around. Her melodious voice resounded. "There is no need to understand. You only need to know that he can give you what you want." Xiao Chen and Chu Xinyan had known each other for a long time. However, when they met again, they felt somewhat restrained. Chu Xinyan had not expected that after the battle on the heaven ascending platform, Xiao Chen would return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. When they first met, the difference in their cultivation was not that great. Now it was like heaven and earth. Chu Xinyan was still lingering in the martial saint realm. However, Xiaochen had already crossed the threshold of martial king and was about to break through to martial monarch. Junior sister Chu, help me find 10 odd spirit herbs that are around 1,000 years old. They can raise a cultivator's cultivation. Following Chu Xinyan's lead, the two soon arrived at the 1,000-year-old herb field on Jade Maiden Peak. However, the results disappointed Xiaochen. Although it was called a 1,000-year-old herb field, most of the spirit herbs were only 800 or 900 years old. There were very few that were 1,000 years old. There was not even one that was 2,000 years old. Perhaps Jiang Qi did not know that he had already consumed a large number of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. Such spirit herbs were no longer useful to him. He could only casually find 10 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and use them as gifts. In a month's time he would be returning to Mo City. He had to bring something back. Casually taking out 10 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs? When Chu Xinyan heard this, she could not help but roll her eyes in her heart. What do you mean by casually looking around? Did this guy really think that 1,000-year-old elixirs were cabbages? That was something that even elders couldn't get even if they begged for it. However, if she knew that Xiaochen was only using it as a gift and felt that it wasn't good enough, who knew how she would feel? Xiaochen thought for a moment and said, "Oh right, it must be more than 1,000 years old. Don't use those that are 800 or 900 years old to make up the numbers. They won't have any effect." 1,000 years was a threshold, just like human cultivation. Once a spirit herb passed this threshold, it would be on a completely different level from a spirit herb that was 800 or 900 years old. Its effect would be several times stronger. Hence, Xiaochen specially reminded her. How picky. Chu Xinyan could not help but grumble in her heart. However, she still obediently went to take care of it. After all, Shen Manjun had spoken, so she had to obey. With Chu Xinyan taking care of this matter, Xiaochen was more free. After waiting for an hour, Chu Xinyan returned with 15,000-year-old spirit herbs. After Xiaochen checked that there were no mistakes, he smiled gently and said, "Many thanks, junior sister Chu. I will take my leave first." When Xiaochen returned and met Jiang Qi and Shen Manjun, he thanked them again. After all, these things were useless to him. However, he still had to show basic courtesy. Jiang Qi muttered, "Xiaochen, do you have any other requests? You can just mention them. If I can do it, I will definitely help you." Representing the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in the 5-Nation Youth Competition was one thing. However, it was unknown if he could get a good ranking. How could Xiaochen make any requests? He could only reject the other party's kind intentions. In an extremely desolate forest on Qingyan Peak, lightning flashed and thunder roared in the sky. Dark clouds churned as Xiaochen practiced his newly obtained Lightning Tribulation Saber technique. The Lightning Tribulation Saber technique was different from the Four-Season Saber technique. It did not require much personal comprehension. All Xiaochen needed to do was understand the meaning and state of each move. This was a saber technique that the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder comprehended in his early years, and not in his later years. Naturally, the difficulty would not be that high. Back then, when the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder was undergoing experiential training in a dangerous place, he coincidentally discovered a rank 9 spirit beast undergoing its lightning tribulation, preparing to transform into a human. Under the 9 layers of lightning tribulation, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder comprehended this 9-saber lightning tribulation saber technique. He was able to create his own saber technique before the age of 30. Furthermore, it was a peak earth-ranked saber technique. With such horrifying talent, it was no wonder the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder could become someone like Emperor Wu in the future. From a certain perspective, if Xiaochen could completely comprehend his own Four-Season saber technique, his talent would be comparable to that of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder. In nature, lightning is viewed as the will of the Heavenly Tao. If anyone defies it, the Heavenly Tao will send down a lightning tribulation to destroy everything. Xiaochen muttered. The first 3 moves of the lightning tribulation saber technique accumulate power, the next 3 become lightning, and the final 3 bring down a tribulation. When practiced to the highest level, one can steal the heavenly Tao and punish the lightning on behalf of the heavens. I hope it will not disappoint me. Xiaochen had personally seen Bai undergo his tribulation. The secret manual had a detailed introduction to the 9 moves of the saber technique. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder had also personally explained them. Furthermore, Xiaochen had strong comprehension abilities. Xiaochen's progress in cultivating the lightning tribulation saber technique was extremely fast. Compared to the 4-season saber technique, it was at least 5 or 6 times faster. He managed to learn all 9 moves in 1 month. This was normal. The 4-season saber technique required Xiaochen to create it himself. He had to feel his way around carefully. As for the lightning tribulation saber technique, the founder of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion had already paved the way for him. He just had to follow his instructions. When comparing the two, it was clear which was more difficult. However, the might of the 4-season saber technique was definitely above the lightning tribulation saber technique. Furthermore, it was more suitable for Xiaochen. After all, he had comprehended it himself. Xiaochen sheathed his saber and stood upright. The thunderclouds above him slowly scattered. He muttered to himself, 2 months have passed already. It is time to return to Mo City to take a look. There were still 4 more months before the 5-nation youth competition. After that, Xiaochen might have to go to the Kunlun realm. He might never have the chance to return to Mo City. Even though Xiao Xiong had chased him out of the Xiao clan and did not acknowledge him as his son, blood was thicker than water. As his son, he had to go back and take a look. Those were the brothers who had fought so hard for the promise of 10 years. Those disciples who were willing to kneel before Xiao Xiong and plead for him. How were they doing now? Good or bad? Xiaochen had to personally take a look before he could feel at ease. Late at night, the full moon hung high in the sky. Its silver light illuminated the entire Qingyan Peak. Using the moonlight, Xiaochen headed for Lu Ruyue's courtyard, preparing to bid her farewell. Ha, ha, ha. In the courtyard, Lu Ruyue wore tight robes that perfectly outlined her alluring figure. She focused on practicing her saber techniques, 1 move at a time. Saber lights flickered. As Lu Ruyue walked, a strong wind blew in the courtyard, kicking up countless fallen leaves. Now Lu Ruyue was already a peak superior grade martial king. As long as her state of wind improved further, she would be able to advance to half-step martial monarch. When Lu Ruyue saw Xiaochen outside, she grasped the small saber in her hand. She spun the saber and attacked Xiaochen with a sharp aura. Are we going to exchange moves again? Xiaochen smiled faintly. He was not surprised. It had been like this every night for the past few days. The two of them would exchange moves and find out what they were lacking in. However, in general, it was mostly Xiaochen giving pointers to Lu Ruyue. Now, Xiaochen's combat experience and insight had already left Lu Ruyue in the dust. Dang, dang, dang. Under the moonlight, Xiaochen and Lu Ruyue moved quickly in the courtyard. When their weapons clashed, sparks flew. Today, you arrived 4 hours earlier than usual. Are you here to say goodbye to me? Lu Ruyue said as she brushed past Xiaochen and sent out a saber strike at lightning speed. Gee. Xiaochen casually used his saber to block Lu Ruyue's attack. He said softly, I have to return to Mo City before the 5-nation youth competition. How long will you be gone for? When will you be back? At least 1 month, at most 3 months. In any case, I will be back before the Heavenly Saber Pavilion departs for the Great Jin Nation. The two of them exchanged moves as they chatted. Under the gentle moonlight, they appeared carefree and carefree. A faint warmth flowed in their hearts. After an hour, the two of them finished exchanging moves. Lu Ruyue sheathed her weapon and smiled helplessly. It has only been a month and you have improved so much. I really cannot compare to you. Xiaochen held Lu Ruyue's hand and smiled. What's wrong? Are you afraid that I will bully you in the future? Lu Ruyue blushed and said softly, I will accept it if you bully me. However, if you go too high, I'm afraid the distance between us will increase. Xiaochen pulled Lu Ruyue into his embrace. His gaze was deep as he looked at the bright moon in the night sky. A melancholic smile appeared on his face as he muttered. In this world, Qingyan Peak is my second home. No matter how high or far I go, I will have to return home. Home. Lu Ruyue felt warmth in her heart. She looked up at Xiao Chun and gently pecked him on the lips. Her eyes were filled with tenderness. Xiao Chun smiled faintly and carried Lu Ruyue horizontally. Then, he walked towards her residence. The two of them were both youths. In the past 2 months, they had been cultivating together at night. When they were deeply in love, the so-called matters between a man and a woman would naturally happen when the conditions were right. The Great Qin nation had 4 prefectures: the Dongming province, the Shihe province, the Nanling province, and the Northern King's residence. Each prefecture had 3 continents, and each prefecture had 9 counties. Each county had a number of small cities. Mo City was such a small city. On the map of the vast Great Qin nation, it did not stand out at all. It did not even have a note. There were many such cities in the Great Qin nation. They were so ordinary that they could not be more ordinary. On this particular day, at the city gates of Mo City, a delicate and handsome white-robed youth walked over from the distance. He had a saber at his waist, and his expression was calm as he walked at a steady pace. Among the cultivators in the surroundings, that white-clothed youth did not wear any luxurious accessories. He did not give off the aura of a cultivator either. However, he gave off a unique aura. He stood out from the crowd, like a crane among chickens. Several of the martial masters in the surroundings could not help but look at him. The white-clothed bladesman was naturally Xiao Chun. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion was in the Shihe province, and Mo City was in the Dongming province. One was in the east and the other was in the west. Xiao Chun spent half a month traveling at full speed. Chapter 551. After not being here for 4 years, Xiao Chun revealed a faint smile when he revisited this place. I'll go and see Big Brother Mo Fan first. If there is a chance, I'll get him to help me improve the Lunar Shadow Saber. The rank 6 Thunder Rock demonic core is no longer able to keep up with my current strength. Back when Xiao Chun forged the Lunar Shadow Saber, he was only an insignificant cultivator. Naturally, the rank 6 Thunder Rock was something that Xiao Chun did not dare to imagine. However, now that he was a half-step martial monarch, he could instantly kill a rank 6 demonic beast. This demonic core was no longer suitable for the Lunar Shadow Saber. Thus, when Xiao Chun saw a 1,000-year-old rank 9 lightning-attributed demonic core in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Hidden Treasure Pavilion, he immediately took one. After paying the city entrance tax, Xiao Chun followed the crowd into the city. The scene on both sides of the street brought many warm memories to Xiao Chun's mind. He found a restaurant in the city and sat down by the window on the 2nd floor. Xiao Chun called the waiter over and handed him a gold ingot. He said, "Answer whatever I ask." The fist-sized gold ingot dazzled the waiter's eyes. He bit down hard on it, and after he was sure it was real, he quickly bowed and smiled. "Hee hee, young hero, just ask whatever you want to ask. However, there is actually nothing much to ask in Mo City." Xiao Chun muttered to himself for a while before asking, "Which clan is the strongest in Mo City?" The waiter laughed loudly. "Is there a need to ask? Naturally, it is our Zhang clan. Currently, more than half of the businesses in Mo City are in the hands of our Zhang clan." "Your Zhang clan?" Xiao Chun frowned heavily. Something did not seem right. The waiter said proudly, "Hee hee, that's right. Now, all the restaurants and inns in the city are the businesses of the Zhang clan. Although I am not a direct descendant of the Zhang clan, I am still surnamed Zhang. We can be considered of the same sect." Xiao Chun took a sip of wine. His expression was somewhat unsightly. If he remembered correctly, this restaurant belonged to the Xiao clan many years ago. What about the Xiao family in the past? The waiter revealed a cocky expression as he said, "The river flows east for 30 years and then west for 30 years. 2 years ago, the Xiao clan was like the sun in the sky in Mo City, or even the entire Cheesy County. However, now they can only hide at the foot of Seven Horn Mountain. It won't be long before we lose this Seven Horn Mountain." Xiao Chun's heart sank. For years ago, before he left the Xiao clan, he used the Ninth Heaven's Thunder Formation to capture the upper echelons of the Zhang clan, the Tang clan, and the Lung clan, the number 1 clan in Cheesy County. With the strength of the Xiao clan, logically speaking, they should not have any opponents in the Cheesy County. What exactly happened? Could it be that the noble clans that I offended made a move? That can't be right. Feng Feishua promised me that she would not let those noble clans touch the Xiao clan. With the enormous strength of the Flying Snow Trade Association, the aristocratic families would definitely not act recklessly. That would be suicidal. Papa. Xiaochen took out another 2 gold ingots and handed them over. Let me ask you again. What exactly happened 2 years ago that caused the Xiao clan to decline so quickly? When the waiter saw the 2 gold ingots, his face lit up with joy. However, his expression was somewhat awkward. He chuckled and said, "We are just insignificant people. Actually, young hero, you should be able to guess that we do not know any confidential information. Anyway, 2 years ago, the Xiao clan's clan head and a few elders were suddenly severely injured. After that, the Zhang clan and the Tang clan rose up and snatched away many of the territories that originally belonged to the Xiao clan." Xiaochen waved his hand and dismissed the waiter. He was not too surprised to receive such an answer. A waiter of a restaurant was not even a cultivator. It was easy to imagine how much he would know. Xiaochen had only asked casually and did not hold much hope. However, he did have a headache now. Originally, he wanted to ask the waiter about the situation of the Xiao clan. He did not expect to receive news that the Xiao clan had fallen into dire straits. I should go and ask Big Brother Mo. With his strength, he should know something that the waiter did not. Haha. Xiaoling, I did not expect you to come to my restaurant for a meal. Come, let's go to a private room. I, Zhangziang, will treat you. Just as Xiaochen was about to pay the bill and leave, a familiar voice came from the hall downstairs. Xiaochen entered deep thought. This name, Zhangziang, seemed familiar. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen finally found this person from the corner of his memory. Zhangziang, the second son of the Zhang clan head. His elder brother, Zhang He, had once fought with Xiaochen. Zhang He was still considered someone important, but this Zhangziang was nothing. However, Xiaochen's tone was very arrogant. As for Xiaoling, naturally, Xiaochen would not forget her. She was the Xiao clan disciple who had pleaded for him when he participated in the trial with her. Xiaochen also had a deep impression of the youth beside her. That was Yilan, a disciple of the Xiao clan with a different surname. He was deeply in love with Xiaoling. Yilan had once met with a great calamity, and was even willing to use his life to save Xiaoling. It looked like the two of them had succeeded. Right now, the two of them seemed to have met with some trouble. Xiaoling looked coldly at Zhang Ziyang and stood up. How unlucky. We can't even eat in peace. Yilan, let's go. Xiaoling felt very depressed. She had eaten the signature dishes of this restaurant since she was young. This time, she could not resist sneaking out with Yilan for a meal. However, before they started eating, they ran into the person they did not want to see the most. You want to leave? Have you asked for my permission? Zhang Ziyang snorted coldly. His subordinates immediately stepped forward to cut off the two's path of retreat. Yilan's face sank. He placed his right hand on his weapon and shielded Xiaoling behind him. He said in a cold voice, Zhang Ziyang, what are you trying to do? Don't forget what the city lord said. A strange smile appeared on Zhang Ziyang's face as he said, Don't worry, since the city lord has already mediated the conflict between the two clans, I will not make things difficult for you. However, do you think you can leave without paying the bill? Dong. Xiaoling tossed 2 ingots of gold onto the table and snorted, Are you satisfied now? 50 taels of gold. There is no need for the change. Let's go. However, the 5 men blocking the entrance did not move at all. They did not have any intention of moving away. The 5 men were all peak martial grandmasters. None of them were weaker than Yilan. If the 5 of them attacked together, they would be able to subdue Yilan in an instant. Zhang Ziyang was expressionless as he crushed the 2 ingots of gold on the table. He said in a cold voice, Did I say that this meal was priced in gold? The 2 of you, hand over 100 inferior grade spirit stones immediately. Otherwise, none of you can think of leaving. Xiaoling and Yilan's expressions changed greatly. Xiaoling cursed out loud. What do you think you are selling? Even a rank 1 spirit beast feast would not fetch such a price. Zhang Ziyang looked at Xiaoling graceful figure, and a frivolous look flashed in his eyes. He smiled and said, You better understand the situation. This is my Zhang clan's restaurant. It will sell for as much as I say. Even if you don't want to accept it, you will have to accept it. You little girl, I have been eyeing you for a long time already. How dare you send yourself to the tiger's den? I will count to 5. If you are unable to pay the spirit stones, I will make you pay with your body. Zhang Ziang acted like he was in control of the situation. Currently, the Zhang clan was in the limelight. Their words were law in Mo City. Even the city lord had to give them some face. 5-4. Following Zhang Ziang's countdown, the 5 men at the entrance laughed sinisterly. Their auras locked onto the 2 of them, preparing to attack at any moment. 1 attack. Zhang Ziang shouted coldly. The 5 men immediately pounced over, scaring Xiaoling until she turned pale. Pooh! However, just at this moment, 5 muffled miserable cries resounded. 5 peak martial grandmasters with overbearing auras stopped breathing without any warning and fell over. On the second floor, the cultivators who were leaning on the railing to watch the excitement were all astonished. Their expressions were very confused. Among the crowd, Xiaochen held a wine flask. He revealed a faint smile as he unhurriedly poured wine into his mouth. Zhang Ziang, who was in the hall, was startled. A manservant behind him quickly checked the 5 men's breathing. He raised his head and said with a trembling voice, "Second. Young master, it seems like they are all dead." Xiaoling, and Yilan were both at a loss. It was clearly a matter of life and death. How did it turn out like this? Still not leaving? What are you standing here for? Just at this moment, a voice rang out in the minds of the 2 of them. The 2 of them were astonished and quickly raised their heads to look around. "Stop looking, you won't be able to find me. Go back." The voice rang out in their minds again. Xiaoling, and Yilan exchanged glances. They knew that an expert had made a move to help them. Furthermore, that person did not want to show himself. They did not stay any longer and quickly turned to leave. Trying to leave? There is no way. Before we investigate this matter clearly, neither of you are allowed to leave. Ah! Zhang Ziang was enraged. He leaped into the air and launched himself over. However, just as Zhang Ziang's body soared into the air, there seemed to be a huge, formless hand pressing down on him with an irresistible force. Zhang Ziang fell with a pa sound in an extremely comical position. It was as comical as one could imagine. Zhang Ziang's face landed on the ground and he fell flat on his face. Ha ha ha. Young Master Zhang, your actions are not something an ordinary person can do. You must have practiced for a long time at home. Xiaoling giggled and went out the door with Yilan. Bastard. Don't run for this old man. Zhang Ziang's right hand smashed the ground violently. His body soared into the air, and he was about to stand up again. Xiaochen smiled gently and placed the wine flask aside with his right hand. Then he sent out a palm strike with his left hand. A huge force was transmitted through the void without leaving a trace. Pa! Another heavy thud rang out. Zhang Ziang fell face first onto the ground. This time he fell even more miserably. Half of his face was red, and a trace of blood seeped out of his nose and mouth. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! This old man doesn't believe that I can't stand up. Zhang Ziang cursed angrily. He circulated his essence and smashed the ground with his right hand. When Zhang Ziang sent out his essence, a strong wind blew and dust drifted. Zhang Ziang soared into the air, his movements swift and agile. After that he fell with a pa sound. Pa, pa, pa. Zhang Ziang tried more than 10 times. His entire face bled from the fall. However, no matter how he tried, he could not stand up. The floor of the hall cracked from the impact. Chapter 552. At first, the people watching the commotion laughed loudly. They felt that this brat was comical. When they thought of his usual arrogant attitude, they felt very carefree in their hearts. However, when they saw Zhang Ziang's miserable state, the smiles on their faces vanished. They all felt that this brat was suffering too much. Being taught a lesson to this extent was even worse than being killed. Zhang Ziang did not care what the others thought of him. He still tried to stand up with much difficulty. This time, he carefully placed his hands on the ground. He placed his left foot on the ground and slowly stood up. His blood-covered face revealed an expression of hope. He slowly arched his back and stood up, one step at a time. The manservant at the side quickly smiled and said, "Young master, you succeeded." Zhang Ziang laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha. Are you messing with me? Damn. If I find out who did this, I will make sure his entire clan dies. I wonder who has the final say in Mo City now." Pa! Before he could finish speaking, Zhang Ziang's entire body was sent flying to the ground. This time, the force he used was so great, and the sound was so loud that everyone in the restaurant could hear it clearly. Everyone felt their hearts skip a beat. Many of them could not bear to watch any longer. They closed their eyes, unable to bear to watch. This brat was too miserable. Entire clan killed? Xiaochen smiled coldly to himself. After not returning for 4 years, this group of people had really forgotten the lesson from back then. Xiaochen walked back to his table and put down the wine flask. Then he tossed out an ingot of gold and jumped out of the window. Of the cultivators present, the highest cultivation was only a peak martial grand master. Xiaochen was a half-step martial monarch. They could not even sense how he had attacked. This was the difference between heaven and earth. For hours later, the manservant sat beside Zhang Ziang in the hall of the restaurant. He advised bitterly, "Second young master, please get up. Everyone in the restaurant has left." Zhang Ziang buried his head on the ground. He was in so much pain that tears flowed down his face. He scolded angrily, "Scram! What do you know? Do you want to see this second young master make a fool of himself? Even if you beat me to death, I will not get up. My face hurts. Do you know that?" In a desolate street in Mo City, Xiaochen followed the route in his memory and slowly made his way to Mo Fan's smithy. Mo Fan's smithy was the same as it was 4 years ago. It was still extremely simple and crude. A weather-beaten signboard was erected at the entrance, looking like it would fall down at any moment. The doors were ajar. Xiaochen stood there for a long time, thinking of the various scenes of the past. As he looked at the lunar shadow saber in his hand, he felt many emotions. For years ago, he forged the lunar shadow saber here. He spoke to a man from 1,000 years ago and made a promise not to make her cry. At that time, he didn't know that man's identity, and he didn't know how talented that man was. Only after Xiaochen thoroughly understood did he realize how heavy that promise was. This promise was equivalent to him receiving the sword of the Thunder King. She was Ao Jiao, a proud sword spirit. Even the Thunder King couldn't guarantee her death with his strength. Could he Xiaochen do it? Xiaochen's expression turned grave. He sighed softly. Even the Thunder King could not guarantee the mulberry sword's death. Can I do it? You don't have any confidence? Trashy master. Startled, Xiaochen said joyfully, "Ao Jiao, are you awake?" Xiaochen remembered Ao Jiao saying that if she woke up again, it would be after she had completely merged with the sword spirit. Inside the lunar shadow saber, Ao Jiao's lips curled up. She smiled softly. "When you were being intimate with her, I had already woken up. I even watched the battle for a long time." Speechless, Xiaochen said, "Should I thank you for not making a sound and disturbing me?" Ao Jiao laughed loudly. "There is no need to thank me. I have always been very magnanimous. Don't just stand there, go in." Xiaochen felt helpless. However, he could not do anything to Ao Jiao, so he could only push the door open and enter. "This small shop is already closed. We are not doing business today." The small shop was filled with dust. Mo Fan limped as he retreated. His back faced Xiaochen as he tidied up some weapons on the shelves. Xiaochen smiled softly. "Are you not doing business with me?" Mo Fan's hands paused for a moment. He turned around and saw a youth in white robes with a saber hanging at his waist. The youth had a smile on his face as he looked at him calmly. "Xiaochen." After a long time, Mo Fan exclaimed in pleasant surprise. Compared to 4 years ago, Xiaochen's appearance had undergone a huge change. This was especially so in terms of his temperament. It had undergone an earth-shattering change. With one glance, an ordinary person would not be able to connect him to the Xiao clan's second young master from 4 years ago. When he entered Mo City, many people did not recognize him. This was the best proof. Mo Fan said ruefully. It's really you. Your change is extraordinary. If not for this lunar shadow saber, I would not have been able to recognize you. Xiao Chen looked around the interior of the shop. There were weapons everywhere. He sighed. It has been 4 years, but your shop has not changed much. Mo Fan smiled. How could my shop have changed? Let's talk inside, let's drink and chat. Wait a moment. Mo Fan asked suspiciously, what's wrong? Xiao Chen did not say anything. He stretched out his hand, and a sword flew out from the pile of weapons. The sword was 3 meters long and 2 fingers wide. It was as thin as a wing, but when it danced in the air, it did not make any sound. Listening to the sword and communicating with it, Xiao Chen shouted, and the thin sword suddenly trembled non-stop, giving off a melodious sword hum. Wang, wang, wang. In that instant, all the swords in the shop buzzed in unison. The boundless sword hum was linked together, and even the house seemed to tremble. All right, we can go in now. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and stopped. All the sword hum stopped in that instant, and everything returned to normal. Mo Fan was flabbergasted. He did not know why Xiao Chen suddenly did this. Ao Jiao, who was in the lunar shadow saber, clenched her fist and said unhappily, this fellow is really vengeful. Unexpectedly, he did not forget my words even after 4 years. Mo City. At the restaurant where Zhang Ziyang and Xiao Ling clashed, the Zhang clan's clan head, Zhang Yan, rushed over with the elites of his clan. There was a crack in the ground, as well as Zhang Ziyang, who was crawling on the ground, refusing to get up. There were also 5 men lying on the ground, unable to get up. Zhang Yan, who was at the door, had an incredibly sullen expression. He called the manservant over and said in a sullen voice, tell me everything that happened in detail. Unexpectedly, 5 martial grandmasters died. A martial grandmaster was already the elite combat force of Mo City. Now that 5 of them died in one go, Zhang Yan could not help but be in a bad mood. The manservant nervously recounted everything that happened. When he saw Zhang Yan going over to pull Zhang Ziyang up, he said anxiously, Master, don't go over and talk to him. Young master's emotions are not right. Zhang Yan glanced at him and did not care. He thought to himself, I am his old man. What is wrong with calling him up? Scram. Idiot. Did you not hear what I said? This old man's face hurts. I don't want to get up. No matter who calls me now, this old man will not get up. When Zhang Ziyang heard footsteps, he immediately shouted loudly. Zhang Yan's expression changed as he sent out a kick. Zhang Ziyang's entire body was sent flying with a loud bang. When Zhang Ziyang saw that it was Zhang Yan, he quickly got up. However, as he was halfway up, he seemed to think of something terrifying, so he quickly lay back down. Father, I really cannot get up now. Don't bother about me. Let me lie here for the night first. I will feel uncomfortable if I don't lie here. Zhang Ziyang said with a sullen expression. Zhang Yan scolded angrily. Trash. Bring him back. Bring the corpses of these 5 people back for the Lord Envoy to examine. There is no need. I am already here. At some point in time, a young black-clad cultivator descended from the roof of the hall. Many ancient patterns were embroidered on his black robes, making him look dignified and mysterious. When Zhang Yan saw this person, he quickly said respectfully, Greetings, Lord Envoy. The black-clad man ignored Zhang Yan's attitude and started to examine the corpses of the 5 people. He flipped over one of the corpses and discovered a bloody hole in the forehead of that person. This was the cause of death. The black-clad man opened his hand and sucked. That person's head started swaying left and right as if something was stuck inside. Xiao! A tiny fragment flew out of the bloody hole. With a cracking sound, the fragment flew out. The surging power spread out, and the corpse's head exploded with a bang, directly grinding into powder. The surrounding Zhang clan cultivators, including Zhang Yan, were all startled. Their complexions turned pale. Even a remnant energy could be so powerful. How strong was the person who did it? The masked man looked at the shard in his hand and said in shock, This is a shard of a medial-grade spirit stone. The person who made this is really generous. Zhang Yan asked carefully, Lord Envoy, how strong is this person? The black-clad man said indifferently. About medial grade Marshal King. Don't bother about this. I'll deal with it. Call all the workers in the shop over. That person must have been here before. We will be able to make a judgment after questioning him. Medial grade Marshal King. Zhang Yan's chest tightened. The Xiao clan's clan head was only an inferior grade Marshal King. If this person was a medial grade Marshal King, killing him would be easy. Fortunately, the Lord Envoy had spoken. Medial grade Marshal King would not be a problem. In the backyard of the smithy, Mo Fan drank a mouthful of wine. After he heard Xiao Chen's question, he sighed and said, "Back then, you wrote me a letter asking me to help you take care of the Xiao clan. I have always remembered it. However, I cannot help you this time." Xiao Chen felt excited. Indeed, there was more to this. In the morning, he had heard from the waiter that the Xiao clan's clan head and first elder were severely injured. Xiao Chen had already guessed that there was more to this. Hence, he was not in a rush to meet with Xiaoling, and first elder. He planned to hide his identity first. For years ago, Xiao Xiong was already a peak martial saint. Now that 4 years had passed, given Xiao Xiong's strength, he would definitely be a martial king. The person who could injure him was definitely a high-ranked martial king. If the Zhang clan spent some of their savings to hire an inferior grade martial king, it might be possible. However, if they wanted to hire a high-ranked martial king, the Zhang clan would not be able to afford it. If they could afford it, the Zhang clan would have conquered Mo City long ago. There would be no need to wait for the promise of 10 years. Mo Fan continued. 2 years ago, a sect called the Heavenly Saint cult came to Cheesy County. It is very powerful, and your father was injured by the people of their sect's emissary. The Zhang clan is also a puppet supported by the Heavenly Saint cult. Xiao Chen took a sip of wine and frowned. Sacred Heavenly Church? Where did they come from? I have never heard of them. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.